The Li clan is finished. As the distant spectators gazed at the violently burning flames that covered the Li clan and leaped into the sky, coldness emerged within their hearts for no rhyme or reason. It was as if they'd fallen into an icy pit. The first clan of Pine Mist City that had dominated for 1,000 years had now been completely annihilated by a single youth who had only been a talisman-crafting apprentice 1 year ago. Reality was so brutal, so inconceivable, so soul-stirring and shocking. Everyone knew after experiencing this battle, Xianxia wasn't the weak youth that could be bullied, humiliated, and ridiculed. He wasn't the disciple from an impoverished family that shouldered the name of Jinx. He was bound to be the most dazzling star in Pine Mist City in the last 1,000 years. Amongst the flames that leaped into the sky, the silent crowd of people and the twilight color of night descending, the atmosphere at the scene was covered in dense oppression and deathly silence. Whereas Xianxia was just intending to leave. Xianxia, stay where you are. A forceful, loud shout was like the sound of thunder that tore the silence to pieces, and with a swish, countless gazes shot towards it. Who was it that still dared provoke Xianxia at this time? Swoosh! Swoosh! 2 figures tore through the sky, and the heaven and the earth were filled with violent flows of air. Subsequently, a middle-aged man in a violet robe flew over. He was 3 meters tall and had a straight back that was like a spear. He was full of an impressive and dignified manner. The person was the supreme dictator of the Pine Mist City's general's estate, and the actual ruler of Pine Mist City, Qin Han. At his side was the #1 expert under the command of the general's estate who possessed a thin appearance and long arms, Luo Chong. The nearby crowd of spectators couldn't help but be dumbstruck when they saw these 2 people appear. General Qin didn't appear earlier, not later, yet he deliberately appeared at this time. Could it be that he wants to take advantage of the situation? Beside the sea of flames, Xianxia raised his eyes to gaze at Qin Han and Luo Chong, who'd appeared suddenly. He vaguely understood what had happened, and his heart couldn't help but sink. They've come with ill intentions. Step, step. Step, step, step. After Qin Han and Luo Chong had just arrived, a large group of general's estate guards had dashed over behind them, and they were in perfect order. With a glance, one would be able to discern that they followed strict military discipline and severe rules. General Qin, what business do you have here? Xianxia's eyes slightly narrowed. He was just about to circulate his true essence when a wave of exhaustion appeared in his mind, causing him to feel dizzy, and his eyelids were twitching as he was overcome by an impulse of wanting to sleep from drowsiness. This was because his soul had been used up too intensely. Earlier, for the sake of avoiding from suffering the attack of the Darklight Baleful Blood Pearl, he'd used his God Shaker arts to fiercely shake Li Fengtu's soul, causing Li Fengtu's mind to go blank for a moment. It was because of this that he was able to easily kill Li Fengtu. However, this God Shaker arts consumption of the soul was extremely terrifying, and only a single strike had caused his spiritual perception to have almost been completely used up. If it wasn't for his spiritual perception being sufficiently strong, his soul would have been injured by this attack. Most importantly, because of the battle from before, practically 99% of Xianxia's true essence was consumed. At this moment, not to mention battling someone, even controlling a flying sword was slightly difficult. It was precisely because of this that when Xianxia saw Qin Han and Luo Chong coming together, and that they had brought a huge amount of guards from the general's estate, he instantly understood in his heart that these fellows wanted to seize the opportunity of him being powerless to fight and take advantage of the situation. Xianxia, do you know your crimes? Qin Han held his hand behind his back and spoke without the slightest bit of feeling. What crimes have I committed? Xianxia spoke with an emotionless expression. Luo Chong, tell him. Qin Han seemed to feel that explaining to Xianxia himself was a loss of dignity, so he instructed the nearby Luo Chong to explain it. The skin on Luo Chong's face tightened as he said coldly, "The general's estate provided for the prohibition of causing trouble and fighting in the city. You've already violated the iron law of my general's estate and according to the rules set out." When he spoke up to hear, it seemed to be slightly difficult for Luo Chong to open his mouth and he hesitated to speak. Luo Chong, stand down. Qin Han's brows raised up for a moment. Then he said coldly, "According to the rules, you ought to be killed and gotten rid of, However, if you obediently allow yourself to be captured, then lower your head to admit your crimes, you can avoid death and only have your cultivation cripples before being banished to a mine to be a slave for the rest of your life. Chun Shi, you're still young, don't destroy your own future. My general's estate represents the will of the Darchu dynasty, and its iron law tolerates no violation. You've publicly slaughtered the entire Li clan, and it has already violated many iron laws. If you don't resist, I can guarantee your safety. The nearby Luochong took over. I caused trouble? I violated the iron law of the general's estate? If I don't admit my crimes, then you'll kill me, and if I admit my crimes, you'll cripple my cultivation and lower me to a mining slave. Chun Shi muttered for a short moment and was angry to the point his heart hurt. Then he suddenly raised his head, and his voice had already become extremely icy cold and indifferent. Let me ask the two of you, where was your general's estate when the over 10,000 commoners of the Commoners' District died miserably under the blades of the Li clan? Where was your general's estate when the Zhang General Goods Store and Clearstream Restaurant were destroyed into ruins? That year, when my Chun clan was annihilated, where were the two of you? Both of you close your eyes to all kinds of evil. Yet the kind-hearted and courageous should be at your mercy to be humiliated and trampled on? What qualifications do shameless and despicable villains like the both of you who bully the weak and fear the strong have to represent the will of the Darchu dynasty? What did you say? Qin Han glanced at Chun Shi. His aura was icy cold and his gaze revealed strands of killing intent. Chun Shi's words had pricked his nerves and had caused him to be unable to refute it, because everyone in the entire Pine Mist City knew all these things, but no one dared to fearlessly speak of it like Chun Shi. This was the might of the general's estate, disallowing anyone from going against the word of the general's estate. At the same time that the general's estate conducted its affairs according to the rules, the general's estate itself was trampling on those very rules, oppressing the good and flattering the powerful. As the saying goes, rules were only set to shackle and confine the weak, whereas the strong stood above the rules, and no one would dare voice out criticism when they trampled on and broke the rules. This was an unwritten law, a hidden rule that couldn't be declared with the mouth, as it was something that went against the existing rules, yet they existed everywhere in the world. At this moment, Chun Shi's words had exposed all these things that broke the rules, and it was like a fierce and resounding slap on his face, slapping Qin Han's face to the point it burned with pain. What did I say? Amongst the people present, I'm afraid only you are feigning ignorance and asking this, right? Chun Shi was already ready to risk everything. What general's estate, what will of the Darchu dynasty? Would Chun Shi pay attention to all this at this moment? He already wasn't the weakling from before that was at the mercy of others. When faced with this extent of provocation, being afraid and submitting was undoubtedly being irresponsible with his own life. Nonsense! My general's estate has already arrested and publicly sentenced to death the murderer responsible for the deaths of those people. It's just that you didn't see it. Qin Han was able to become the owner of the general's estate. Thus he wasn't an ordinary person, and he took a deep breath before saying coldly, "You instead slaughtered the entire Li clan in public, and not only do you not repent, you strike back and accuse my general's estate of not conducting its affairs satisfactorily. Looks like only by killing a villain like you today that I will be able to protect the dignity of my general's estate. Truly a good scheme. After killing me, both of you can report to the Dragon Lake City's Sioux clan that you've accomplished the task. Right?" Chun Shi puckered his lips, and his eyes drooped as he said in a light voice, "Looks like today's matter can only be solved by combat." "Combat?" Qin Han sneered and said, "You think too highly of yourself. This isn't a battle. This is my general's estate arresting and punishing a villain." Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. It was at this moment that a wave of sounds of something tearing through the sky was like the tide as it abruptly sounded out from the extremely far-away horizon, and 7 streams of flying lights cut through the sky before arriving swiftly and with a bang. "Seniors, look! That kid is Chun Shi. Oh, it's he who obtained the inheritance in the Sword Immortal's abode? Humph! He dares seize things that belong to my Sioux clan? I want him to spit it all out. Ha ha ha! I remember that we've come to Pine Mist City once when we helped little Jiao tear apart her marriage contract all those years ago. Now, we're revisiting a familiar place and meeting an old friend. It's truly fate. Grab him. If he doesn't hand over the treasures from the Sword Immortal's abode, then tear him to mush. Accompanied by a variety of sounds, 7 men and women in luxurious clothes appeared out of thin air. Their auras were formidable like a vast ocean and towering mountain. A tall and mighty young man was in the lead. He had a hooked nose and a profound gaze with a sheathed sword on his back, and his aura shot into the sky like a rainbow. There were another 3 men and 2 women standing by his side, and all of them had formidable auras and matchlessly elegant demeanors. Only one person had a young appearance, his face fair and clear, and he stood respectfully at the side. His aura was obviously greatly inferior to the other 6, yet when he looked at Qin Han and the others, his gaze carried dense arrogance. 6 Golden Hall realm cultivators of the Su clan, the Dragon Lake City's Su clan. Exactly what treasure did Xianxia acquire within the Sword Immortal's abode? It actually drew the simultaneous dispatch of 6 Golden Hall realm cultivators from the Su clan, out of the frying pan into the fire. Even if Xianxia isn't killed by the general's estate this time, he would surely be captured by these 6 Golden Hall realm cultivators. He can't escape this calamity. When they saw these 7 men and women cultivators with extraordinary bearing, the far-away spectators were shocked in their hearts and their eyes revealed deep reverence. 10 years ago, or in other words the 4th year after the Chun clan was annihilated, these men and women had once come to Pine Mist City with a few other Golden Hall realm cultivators. At that time, they tore the marriage contract with the Chun clan's eldest grandchild, Xianxia, into shreds before the eyes of everyone within Pine Mist City, then swaggered off, causing a stir for some time. At this moment, when these Golden Hall realm cultivators appeared once again, how could all the people present not recognize them? It's actually them. Xianxi's eyes squinted as the scenes from when he was 4 surged into his mind, and the hatred in his heart flowed throughout his entire body with a bang. Summer that year, he was withstanding the intense heat of the summer, cultivating bitterly under the scorching sun, and his grandfather lay under the eaves as he taught Chun how to read. The summer breeze was blowing, the leaves were rustling, and everything was so peaceful. However, at dusk, over 10 moving lights slit open this short peacefulness, and they stood in mid-air, looking down on him and his grandfather with arrogant and disdainful expressions. They mocked his grandfather as a piece of old trash. They ridiculed him as a toad that wished to eat the meat of a swan. They tore apart his marriage contract before the eyes of everyone in Pine Mist City. Xianxia was only 4 then. He didn't know what was humiliation and mocking was. He didn't know how great of a pain it was when another comes to your house and wantonly humiliates you. Xianxia only saw his younger brother being afraid to the point of crying on the ground. He saw his grandfather's entire body trembling from rage. He saw the boundless sorrow and anger revealed on that old face, and that gaze of despair caused him to feel afraid, feel helpless, and feel that even the sky was about to collapse. This scene caused an unprecedented blow in his young heart, and it branded him with pain that was impossible to erase. Xianxia shook his head fiercely, then took deep breaths repeatedly to forcefully suppress the hatred and restlessness in his heart. He knew that with his current condition, it was utterly impossible for him to be a match for any one of them. Fleeing was the only path to survival. Vengeance can wait another day. If he wanted to repay all the humiliation he'd suffered, then he must ensure that he survived. Only by surviving would he have the possibility of becoming stronger, and only then would he be able to do all the things he wanted to do. General Qin, these cultivators from outside want to start a battle in Pine Mist City. It's undoubtedly provoking the dignity and will of the general's estate. Are you going to interfere, or not? Xianxia glanced at Qin Han and the others, and he suddenly spoke out. Earlier, Qin Han intended to kill Xianxia by using the pretense of defending the dignity of the general's estate and representing the will of the Darchu dynasty, and he was filled with righteous indignation and justice. Now, when faced with the Golden Hall realm cultivators of the Dragon Lake City's Su clan, Xianxia gave him a taste of his own medicine, and the mocking and ridicule within Xianxi's words was something that anyone could perceive. Qin Han's expression abruptly became extremely gloomy. Xianxia's words were exceedingly vicious. They instantly caused him to be in a bind with no way to back down. If he were to stand idly by, it would undoubtedly prove that his general's estate bullied the weak but was afraid of the strong and repeatedly changed its attitude towards things. If that happened, the dignity and the will of the general's estate would suffer trampling and questioning. If he were to forcefully intercede, then facing the 6 Golden Hall realm cultivators of the Dragon Lake City's Su clan was utterly courting death, without a doubt. Moreover, if the Su clan was enraged because of this, then it would probably be the end of him being a general. Truly laughable. We've come here to help General Qin arrest a villain. How could we be offending the rules of the general's estate? Sharp-tongued and sowing dissension. Looks like little Jiao was correct. This little fellow isn't anything good. In mid-air, the tall and dignified young man in the lead abruptly spoke out coldly. His voice was like a rumbling thunderclap, and it shocked the eardrums of everyone present to the point they felt a piercing pain. Qin Han's expression eased up and took to opportunity to say with cupped hands, "Senior Su Dingyi's words are reasonable. I'll leave this matter to Senior to deal with it." "Okay, leave it to us. Once we arrest this villain, we'll seek your company in the general's estate." Su Dingyi lightly nodded with a calm expression, yet he was extremely arrogant in his bones. "All right, I'll take my subordinates back to the general's estate to lay down a banquet and wait for Senior's triumphant return." Qin Han naturally knew how to behave in a delicate situation. He cupped his hands from afar before taking Luo Chong and all the guards to withdraw. Xianxia paid no attention to all this, and he had an extremely icy-cold expression as he shot his cold gaze at the young man by Su Dingyi's side. "What are you looking at? You're dead today." The young man seemed slightly unable to endure Xianxia's gaze, and he reproached with a stern voice, "I never expected that I would save a heartless and ungrateful thing like you. If I knew earlier, I would have killed you long ago." Xianxia said coldly. The young man was none other than the Azure Sun Sect's Di Hongtu. When they entered Misty Sea City, this person had left with the Limitless Sect's Xue Jing and the Clear World Sect's Mo Han. Yet he never imagined that Di Hongtu would instead bring along a group of Su clan Golden Hall realm cultivators to capture him at this moment. Xianxia was naturally extremely hateful. "You saved me? Ha. If it wasn't for you being afraid of the revenge of the Azure Sun Sect behind me, how could you possibly be so kind? You're truly a laughable person." Di Hongtu laughed loudly without end, not the slightest trace of shame on his face. "If I'm able to save you, I'm naturally able to kill you as well." Xianxia spoke a single sentence coldly, then couldn't be bothered to pay attention to this despicable and shameless person as his gaze shot towards the Su Dingyi and the other Golden Hall realm cultivators. Above the Violet Palace realm was the Golden Hall realm. Developing the Violet Palace was equivalent to establishing the foundation of the Tao, whereas developing the Golden Hall was instead making preparations for charging into the Golden Core realm. Once one advanced into the Golden Hall realm, one was able to absorb the yin and yang qi in the world and temper the true essence in the entire body, causing the yin and yang within it to blend together, promoting the generation of spirit and essence. No matter if it was the quality or might of the true essence, it was greatly higher in grade when compared to the Violet Palace realm. If he was in prime condition, Xianxia was naturally unafraid of battling Golden Hall realm cultivators. But right now, his soul's spiritual perception and true essence was almost completely used up, so he had to be cautious. "I heard you're meticulous in thinking, sly like a fox, and skilled at using various opportunities to escape. You can be considered to be a formidable figure. However, do you think you're able to flee when facing the 6 of us?" Su Dingyi smiled spuriously as he spoke. Obviously, he'd already heard of some of the things about Xianxia from the Sword Immortal's abode from Su Jiao. "Su Jiao is still alive?" Xianxia avoided replying and instead answered with a question. "Of course. Otherwise, how would I know that you seized all the treasures in the Sword Immortal's abode?" Su Dingyi licked his lips as he looked at Xianxia with a burning gaze. It was as if he was looking at a plump goat, as he didn't conceal his greed in the slightest. "Don't talk nonsense with him. Kill him and seize his treasures." A fat and bald man in red robes at the side shook his head as he spoke with a low voice. Exactly, little Jiao said. He's meticulous in thinking. Perhaps he's scheming about how to escape right now. We should swiftly make our move to prevent something unexpected from happening. A beautiful woman with a seductive figure who was wearing a palace dress spoke coldly. She was the only female cultivator amongst the 6 of them. She seemed extremely dazzling, and her voice was indeed icy cold and stiff with surging killing intent. Su Dingy smiled and was just about to say something when he suddenly saw a black light coiled with even darker jet-black lights flash over, and it shot violently towards his group. Damnable bastard. This fellow really doesn't play by the rules. Su Dingy criticized in his heart, yet the movements of his hands weren't slow as he swung his sleeve, intending to shatter the jet-black light. Watch out! Dark light, baleful blood pearl. How could this kid have such a treasure in his possession? Retreat! The numerous explosive shouts behind him caused Su Dingy's heart to jerk. A dark light baleful blood was refined from gathering 36 types of extreme baleful blood from the heavens and the earth, and its might was comparable to the full force strike of a golden core realm cultivator. How could he possibly not know of such a terrifying thing? Su Dingy practically didn't think before retreating explosively. Swoosh! 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 The 6 Golden Hall realm cultivators retreat explosively in all directions. It has happened. Shit! Di Hongtu's reaction was slightly slow by a beat, and at the instant he reacted, the dark light baleful blood pearl had already shot over violently, terrifying him to the point he actually forgot to dodge. Bang! It was like a divine lightning from the 9 heavens had fiercely struck down as an area of 3 kilometers was abruptly filled with a gloomy and evil blood-red splendor that was surging like tidewater. Within an area of 3 kilometers, the rooms, ground, plants, trees, all of them were swiftly corroded, shattered, and annihilated under the enclosure of the bloody light. Ah! Di Hongtu emitted a shrill cry that was miserable like a ghost before his entire body was corroded and swallowed by the intensely surging red color, and it was only an instant before he vanished in the air, leaving neither corpse nor bone behind. After a short moment, the blood-colored lights faded, and within the 3 kilometers area everything was completely corroded into nothingness, and even an enormous pit that caused terror in one's heart was left behind. Utter annihilation. All life was obliterated and dead. As they gazed at everything that was deathly silent like they were in an ancient ruin, Su Dingy's group of 6 were bewildered and indeterminate, and their entire bodies were extremely cold. Even if they were Golden Hall realm cultivators, when faced with a treasure that was comparable to a Golden Core realm cultivator's full force strike, they could only dodge and flee. Damn it! Where did that fellow get a dark light baleful blood pearl? Su Dingy was the first to awaken from his shock, and he noticed a black figure extremely far in the distance that vanished with a few movements. From far away, Xianxia's voice that was wispy like wind sounded out. I'll surely repay all of you generously in the future. Chase him. He can't run far. Su Dingy howled angrily before chasing up from afar. If word were to spread that a little fellow at the Violet Palace realm cultivator was able to escape under their gazes, then it would simply be terrible humiliation. When the other 5 saw this, they had a murderous look on their faces as well as they closely followed from behind. Swish! Xianxia flew swiftly for his life. The divine windwing flight was executed to the limit by him, and his entire body was like a strand of wind that instantly fled out by 50 kilometers. I don't have much true essence left, and I'm barely able to sustain this for 10 minutes. If I want to flee safely, then I must find a safe place to conceal myself. Xianxia pondered madly in his mind, and after a long time, his gaze unintentionally glanced to notice the boundlessly vast grassland that was revealed in the extreme distance. Rowdy grasslands. Isn't the oceanic desert behind it? Xianxia's eyes lit up, and he didn't hesitate to speed up and move forward right away. In the boundless grasslands, winding rivers flowed ceaselessly like numerous soft silk ribbons, and when looked at from the sky, it was beautiful to the point it was out of this world. Numerous grassland tribes and races that were still barbaric lived and multiplied within it. Moreover, ruins, divine statues, and remains left behind from ancient times filled it with an ancient and barbaric feeling. Supposedly, there were mysterious priests that possessed energies that were different from chi refiners, and its might was extremely unbelievable as well. This was the Rowdy Grasslands, a barbaric place that was at the border of the Darchu dynasty's southern territory. After a long time, Xianxia silently descended to the ground, then flashed out while staying close to the ground, and his entire body seemed to have transformed into a strand of cool breeze that blew atop the grasslands. He'd fused into one with the heavens and the earth, and no one was able to notice anything off from it. Some shepherds were herding the sheep and cattle, swinging their whips as they rode their steeds, and they were extremely cheerful. They only felt a cool breeze blew past them, blowing to the point the jade-green grass on the ground bent downwards like numerous jade-green waves that were rising and falling, and they didn't realize in the slightest that a figure had flown past them. Xianxia, who'd comprehended a complete Wind Dao insight, had flawlessly fused with the wind above the grasslands. At this moment, he was the wind, fluttering indeterminately and changing without a trace. This fellow's aura has become faster and faster, and he doesn't have the slightest intention of stopping. He seems to want to enter the oceanic desert. In the extremely far-away sky, Su Dingyi's expression became grim as he seemed to have sensed something. This kid is extremely strange. He isn't relying on a flying magic treasure, yet his speed is still incomparably swift, and he's actually even faster than us. Truly strange. The red-robed fatty shook his head endlessly. If he really escapes into the oceanic desert, then it will be troublesome to capture him. Exactly. The oceanic desert is vast and boundless. Gales rage and sandstorms roar within it all year long, and there are even numerous spatial tiers that are extremely dangerous existing within it. It's simply like a land of death. The beautiful woman had a serious expression as she said, "Most terrifying is that it's filled with various terrifying restrictions and ruins. The Great Rebirth Realm Cultivator, Long Yazi, whose name shook the Southern Territory 3,000 years ago, had once gone in to search for treasures. He never returned in the end. This kid just annihilated the Li clan, and his true essence has presumably been almost completely used up. We just have to chase closely without letting up, and we might be able to capture him before he enters the oceanic desert," Su Dingyi said fiercely. At this moment, Xianxia had flown for half a day, and the true essence within his body was already about to dry up soon. However, he vaguely sensed a violent, hot, and dry wind howl as it assaulted his face. He hurriedly flew up and looked from afar. In an extremely distant place, numerous patches of yellow had appeared, and when he flew over closely, he saw clearly that those yellow colors were actually numerous deserts that stretched as far as the eye could see. Whoosh! 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 The violet and raging wind blew to the point the yellow sand fluttered to cover the entire sky. The winds emitted howls that were like wailing ghosts and howling wolves as it swept out and created numerous waves of sand that were 300 m in height, and they were in layer upon layer like an oceanic tide that was extremely magnificent. Gale. Sandstorm. Within the entire oceanic desert, the heaven and earth simply seemed to have fallen into chaos and was completely pale yellow. Even if one's eyesight was any better, one would be unable to see through the actual situation within it. This is the oceanic desert that's called the Land of Death? My true essence has already dried up, and if I want to avoid those 6 damnable fellows, then it would seem like I can only enter it. Death or life? I'll only know after I try. Xianxia muttered to himself as a trace of viciousness flashed within his eyes and he charged forward. Swoosh! 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 Not long after Xianxia entered the oceanic desert, Su Dingyi's group of 6 had hurried over here. We were still a step too late. This fellow is truly resolute. For the sake of avoiding us, he actually charged into the oceanic desert without a care for his life. What should we do now? Wait! Su Dingyi gnashed his teeth as he said, "We'll wait for him here. I don't believe he won't come out. I swear to not give up until I seize the treasures from the Sword Immortal's abode. What if he dies? 1 year's the limit. If that kid doesn't come out, then it proves that we have no fate with the treasures from the Sword Immortal's abode, and we can only leave." Su Dingyi had a gloomy expression as he spoke word for word. His gaze quietly shot towards the depths of the oceanic desert. At that place, traces of Xianxia could no longer be seen, and it was filled with sandstorms that fluttered and raged. The gale howled violently and the sandstorm raged. The oceanic desert, that stretched as far as the eye could see, was like a god with an irritable temper, venting out a bellyful of rage and resentment in a wanton manner. It was filled with the boundless force of destruction. This place contained mysterious ruins that had been left behind since ancient times, terrifying restrictions that caused rebirth realm cultivators to enter but never return, and even spatial tears that swallowed everything. This place was called the Lands of Death. However, today a youth swiftly dashed within it like a gust of wind. Astonishingly, the gale that was sufficient to tear open anything seemed to forever be unable to touch his body. Wherever he passed, no matter how fierce and violent the wind was, it was as if the wind recognized one of its own kind. Like it had seen its companion, it would gently avoid him and open up a space sufficient for him to pass through. The scene was extremely strange. When faced with the gale that roared like a dragon, even a rebirth realm cultivator had to approach it carefully. Yet this youth seemed as if he'd walked into his own backyard and was strolling idly. If this scene were to be seen by an outsider, they would surely be staring agape. Unfortunately, only he was within this land of death now. This person was naturally Xianxia. He who'd mastered a complete wind Dao insight seemed as if he'd seen a strand of gentle breeze when faced with the surging gale, and he was completely unworried that anything would happen to himself. This was the power of Dao insight. However, there was still sand in the wind. Those sand and dust were carried up by the gale and were like a rain of swords that shot out explosively, and they possessed a sharp and terrifying penetrative force. Xianxia naturally didn't dare to go against them and even didn't dare to fly in the air, so he could only rely on the strength of the wind to dash wildly. Presently, my true essence has dried up, but fortunately, my body is strong. Up until now, I've already dashed for almost 1,500 kilometers. If those 6 fellows had chased me, they'd have probably caught up to me long ago. Xianxia swiftly pondered as he dashed wildly. Although he wasn't afraid of the surrounding gales, the oceanic desert contained numerous terrifying and dangerous restrictions, ruins, and spatial tiers. He didn't dare be careless in the slightest. Just earlier, he'd seen a spatial tear that was 3 kilometers long, shaped like a long and narrow curved blade. The interior of the jet-black spatial tear was jet-black as well, black to the point it caused one's heart to palpitate. So long as anything came within a distance of 5 kilometers from it, it would be swallowed completely by the spatial tear. There was no sound and no struggle. It was silent, yet terrifying. This won't do. If I continue like this, there'll surely be a time that my physical strength is completely exhausted. I must find a safe place to replenish my true essence and recover my strength. What's that? Xianxia's gaze unintentionally swept over, and he suddenly noticed that an enormous black shadow had appeared extremely far in the distance of the surging sand. The shadow was 300 m high and it stood upright without moving, seeming to not be a living thing. When he went closer to take a look, it was actually a pitch-black steel that seemed like a sword that pierced through the sky. Even under the corrosion of the violent sands, the steel's surface was still smooth and complete, and it was suffused with a cold light. Sword Tomb. Xianxia noticed 2 blood-red words on the steel. The writing was unrestrained with strokes that were powerful, yet gentle, and a ghastly and sharp chi assaulted his face. Hiss! Xianxia felt his entire body tremble. It was as if his bones were pierced by needles and his entire body went cold. A myriad of sharp swords that madly waved about even appeared within his sea of consciousness, causing the blood in his heart to surge as he saw stars dance before his eyes, and he almost spat blood. He hurriedly turned away his eyes and didn't dare to take another glance. This writing contains terrifying true essence of Sword Dao. Although it's only a mere strand, it's filled with the matchless spirit of dominating and annihilating the entire world. I wonder which expert left behind this steel, as it's even 100 times more terrifying than the sword force on that note in the Sword Immortal's abode. Xianxia was extremely astonished in his heart. He was truly unable to imagine what level of cultivation the person that possessed this level of sword skill had attained. Thump! Xianxia sat before the steel, as he noticed that so long as the gale and sand approached within an area of 30 m from the steel, they would be blasted to dispersal by a shapeless force. Hiding here just happened to allow him to avoid the assault of the sandstorm. I wonder why this sword tomb has appeared here? Never mind. I'll recover my true essence first in the event that if I encounter another unexpected event, I'll have the strength to withstand it. Xianxia breathed heavily for a short moment before sitting cross-legged. Then he withdrew the octagonal containment bottle and inhaled deeply, causing a strand of spirit liquid to shoot out from the bottle. Swish! Xianxia circulated the ice crane technique, and the great lake in his violet palace that had long since dried up started to madly absorb the spirit liquid that poured into his body. The octagonal containment bottle had already been replenished by 1.5 million kilograms of spirit liquids. These spirit liquids were those he obtained by selling the spirit materials in the Misty Sea City's Treasure Heaven Pavilion. Xianxia awoke from his meditation, then opened his mouth and exhaled. A strand of airflow that was powerful and condensed shot out like an arrow, not dispersing for a long time. Obviously, within this entire night of bitter cultivation, his strength had improved. For the sake of obtaining the so-called treasures of the Sword Immortal's abode, Su Dingyi's group will surely not easily let me off. Since they didn't enter the oceanic desert, then I presume they're waiting for me outside. Xianxia stood up and stretched his limbs, then frowned. If it's like this, I can only hide in here unless I possess the strength to annihilate all 6 of them. What's this? Xianxia finally noticed numerous pitch-black stones that were scattered on the ground. They were the size of a fingernail and entirely smooth, suffused with spots of luster. They were extremely alike to black-colored jade and agate. He'd bent down, intending to pick one up, when to his surprise, the instant his finger touched the black-colored stone, a strand of sharp aura directly entered his skin. It was as if he was struck by lightning, causing his entire body to fiercely tremble. This is... Xianxia's eyes sprang wide open as a wisp of pleasant surprise was gradually revealed on his face, and he couldn't restrain his voice from starting to tremble. It's actually a Star Soul meteorite. He'd once heard Jiyu mention that during the primordial era, there was a type of treasure called the Star Soul meteorite. Each piece had the core of the star that was developed within it, and it was found after the stars in the sky shattered. It contained baleful chi of the stars that was vast like the sea, and using a Star Soul meteorite to refine the body possessed unbelievably miraculous effects. The universe stars layer body forging arts Xianxia cultivated absorbed the baleful chi of the stars to temper and refine the body, and it had already arrived at the perfection stage of the congenital realm, only lacking a single step to advance into the Violet Palace realm. However, this step was like the divide between Immortal and the gods. According to Jiyu, this step was like a natural chasm. Without the bitter cultivation and accumulation from the earlier stages, and without the strand of breakthrough opportunity that was illusory, he would utterly be unable to touch the edge of the Violet Palace realm. At this moment, as far as Xianxia was concerned, the appearance of the Star Soul meteorite was undoubtedly a breakthrough opportunity for his body refinement to advance to the Violet Palace realm. Swish! Swish! Xianxia's hands were like spades that started digging, and Star Soul meteorites that were completely round and suffused with a glossy light were gathered together one after the other. Xianxia stopped digging after the time for an entire incense stick to burn had passed, whereas beside him, the Star Soul meteorites that were the size of a fingernail were piled into a 1.2 m tall and 1 m wide little hill, and a rough estimate would probably put them at least at 5,000. Cores of the stars. All of these are the essence of the stars, and a single Star Soul meteorite is sufficient to match the baleful chi of the stars that I absorb from a month of bitter cultivation. Once my body refinement breaks through to the Violet Palace realm, I'll be able to condense shaman markings and convert shaman energy. Most importantly, I'll be able to break open the restrictions on the abode and enter within to meet Senior Jiyu. The jade pendant within the flesh on his palm was suffused with a layer of restriction. If he wanted to enter the abode, then he must attain the Violet Palace realm in both body refinement and chi refinement. Similarly, it was the lowest requirement for undertaking the first level of the Heaven Peak of Trails. There's no one to disturb me here, and the sandstorm is unable to invade. It's a superb place for cultivation. I'll cultivate my body refinement to the Violet Palace realm here, then enter the abode to meet Senior Gu. If I'm able to pass the first level of the Heaven Peak of Trails, I presume I'll be able to obtain various unimaginable gains, and my strength will surely increase. Xianxia was exceedingly excited. With a swing of his sleeve, the Star Soul meteorites on the ground were all stashed into his storage ring. Then he sat down cross-legged with a Star Soul meteorite held between his palms as he closed his eyes and circulated the universe stars layer body-forging arts. Rumble. The cold and sharp, baleful chi of the stars was like a liquid river that rumbled as it poured into his flesh and blood. It was like a myriad of savage steeds ramming him, and the enormous tearing force fiercely hammered his flesh, blood, and skin. His muscles, that were already condensed and tough, abruptly vibrated and shrunk as he madly digested this terrifying energy. At the same time, a little energy of the stars fused into his blood, flesh, skin, and tendons, causing them to be suffused with a glittering and chilly sheen. They seemed like porcelain that had been tempered in the furnace for a long time and were gradually becoming smooth and tough. Whereas on Xianxia's back, strands of faint lines of markings appeared. They were vague and extremely blurry, appearing and disappearing on his back, and they seemed extremely mysterious. Advancing in body refinement to the Violet Palace realm required going through innumerable hardships and dangers, and it was 1 in a million. However, so long as one passed through this gate, then numerous shaman markings would condense on the skin of the entire body. These shaman markings condensed into various different shaman marking patterns depending on the cultivation technique. For example, some body refiners that used the flames at the core of the earth to temper the body would possess shaman markings that formed a flame pattern, and it was able to absorb fire baleful chi to be converted into the shaman energy within the body. Xianxia tempered his body with the baleful chi of the stars in the universe. As long as he advanced to the Violet Palace realm, star diagram shaman markings would condense on his skin, transforming the baleful chi of the stars into shaman energy. It was extremely profound. The Violet Palace realm of body refinement was similarly divided into 9 levels. Condensing 1 star diagram shaman marking would represent the first star of the Violet Palace realm, and condensing 9 star diagrams would represent the 9th star of the Violet Palace realm. Once he attained this realm, he would be able to open the shaman marking aperture and charge into the Golden Hall realm. However, to Xianxia right now, what he needed was to first step into the Violet Palace realm from the congenital realm. To a chi refiner, the development of the Violet Palace was the establishing of the Grand Tao's foundation, whereas to a body refiner, the advancement to the Violet Palace realm meant to establish the foundation for the body to become divine. The two each had their own merits, yet they both pointed straight to the Grand Tao and reached the same goal by different methods. Xianxia sat silently like this, clear of what happened both internally and externally, as both internal and external cooperated with each other, and he was completely unaware of the passage of time. A month passed like this. Cultivating continuously for an entire month caused the strength of Xianxia's blood, flesh, and skin to become more and more dense, and more nimble. His tendons were like jade. His flesh and blood condensed, becoming crystal clear as a misty and chilly luster flowed within it. But he was unable to take the final step and make the shaman markings on his back, that were becoming clearer and clearer, condense together and form a star diagram pattern. It was like he was unable to open an indistinct window. However, he wasn't anxious. Every time he cultivated to the point that his mood became restless, he would stop circulating his cultivation method and stand up. Then, he would walk around the sword tomb stele and inspect the towering monument that was almost 300 meters tall. The material of this stele was neither gold nor iron, neither jade nor wood. Its surface was smooth and pitch black, and it emitted a strange energy that obstructed the assaults of the surrounding sandstorms and gales, causing it to seem extremely mysterious. Xianxia took advantage of his free time to inspect the 2 large words with strokes that were powerful, yet gentle on the steel. Every time he would only look at it for the time of a few breaths, yet he was still able to gradually comprehend some things. These 2 large words contained a supreme and terrifying true essence of the Tao of the sword. Although it was only a mere strand of the aura of the sword Tao, It caused Xianxia to feel as if it was a vast sea that contained boundless profundity hidden within. It allowed him to widen his field of vision, and a feeling of reverence arose involuntarily. Another month passed. That day, Xianxia was trying to fathom the strand of the true essence of the sword Tao when a wave of shivering abruptly struck his heart. He faintly seemed to have grasped a strand of an opportunity to break through, and this feeling grew stronger and stronger. Who? Xianxia took a deep breath and didn't hesitate any longer to sit down cross-legged before holding a Star Soul meteorite in each hand and circulating his cultivation technique. Before the sword tomb steel, Xianxia held Star Soul meteorites in each hand as he circulated the universe stars layer body-forging arts. Boundless and vast baleful chi of the stars rushed into his blood, flesh, and skin like dragons that rumbled and roared. On his back, numerous shaman markings were indistinct like a myriad of lifelike worms wriggling on his back as they moved close towards the center of his back. Then converged, overlapped, and weaved together. Bang! It was like a new life had emerged from an egg as the myriad of shaman markings converged together and formed a star diagram pattern that was like a towering mountain. It flickered between brightness and dimness and was suffused with a desolate and thick aura. Xianxia felt his mind drone, and in the next moment it was as if he'd arrived in ancient times. The ground was desolate and the broad expanse of thick earth was boundless. Everywhere was earthen yellow, whereas he himself was chained to the ground and had transformed into a mountain that stood towering on the ground and was deeply rooted. He was solid and lofty, and he wouldn't vanish even after 100 million years. Amongst the 5 attributes in the heaven and the earth, the land was the foundation, the source of everything. Not everything was able to be sourced from the earth, and the thing that grows from it depends on the type of earth. Within the sea of consciousness in his soul, the Fuxi divine status that remained eternally since ancient times emitted a bright, clear light that gave rise to a myriad of tiny lights as strands of vast and profound thoughts flowed into Xianxia's mind. So it's the 5th earth shaman marking. Xianxia was suddenly enlightened in his heart. Swish! Swish! A strand of desolate and thick mysterious energy abruptly emerged from between the flesh, blood, and tendons of his entire body, and an ancient, savage aura flushed and washed his blood, flesh, and tendons repeatedly. Xianxia felt the strange energy was growing, like a river that was rising explosively after a storm, and it became thicker and thicker. Kacha! Kacha! 3 days later, the 2 Star Soul meteorites in Xianxia's hands, that were sufficient to cultivate for 2 months, had shattered into powder in unison. He awoke from circulating his cultivation technique, and a strand of luster that was vast and deep, pure and gentle, flashed within his eyes. Condense a star diagram, assemble the talisman markings, and convert shaman energy. I've finally advanced my body refinement to the Violet Palace realm. Xianxia suddenly stood up. His body shook and numerous strings of muscles instantly whipped about like pythons before swelling outwards, shaking out an ear-piercing wave of air that blew up the dust and sand on the ground to flutter in the air. This was the pure strength of his muscles, without the slightest utilization of true essence. At this moment, Xianxia suddenly had a feeling that his muscles could become soft like a ball of cotton or hard like a piece of steel, and his entire body had become a tendon that had been thoroughly tempered. Even if he stretched out his body, it would be of no consequence as he could expand and contract at will, and it was impossible for such expansion and contraction characteristics to be obtained in the congenital realm, no matter how much one cultivated. So long as the head and heart aren't pierced through by the enemy, then possessing the Violet Palace realm of body refinement is similar to possession an undying body. Xianxia was extremely satisfied as he felt the obvious changes in his body. Then he pondered for a moment before circulating the strength of his body. A desolate and vast energy abruptly surged out from between his blood, flesh, and skin. This energy was like the clear sky, seeming to be translucent, like the mist and clouds, and it was indistinct, mysterious, and unfathomable. This was the shaman energy that was possessed by the school of body refinement. Bang! Xianxia abruptly condensed his shaman energy before clenching his right hand into a fist and smashing it onto the ground. Instantly, A fist print that was more than a meter thick had appeared on the ground. Xianxia felt that the strength of his punch was at least 10 times more formidable than before, and it was virtually able to smash a graded magic treasure into pieces. I absorbed the baleful chi of the stars, and the shaman energy converted from the fifth earth shaman marking I condensed is thick and heavy, yet also carried along the characteristic of being sharp like crystal. I wonder how it will change after I condense the second shaman marking? Unfortunately, the Universe Stars Layer Bodyforging Arts Cultivation technique is only until the Violet Palace realm, and I presume the later portion of the Cultivation technique is in the hands of Senior Jiyu. Looks like the heavens earnestly wish for me to enter the abode as well. Xianxia was absorbed in thought and completely missed that when he smashed out his shaman energy earlier, a strange rhythmic fluctuation silently flashed past the nearby sword tomb steel. I presume Senior Jiyu has been waiting for a long time. Now that I possess a Violet Palace realm cultivation in body refinement and chi refinement, the restrictions on the jade pendant are probably unable to stop me from entering any longer. Xianxia gazed at the jade pendant within the flesh on his palm. He was just about to check on it when a bone-piercing fear abruptly surged into his heart, and when he looked down, he was nearly scared out of his wits. He saw that suddenly, a black hole had appeared beneath his feet, and it was like a whirlpool that silently revolved. Xianxia felt his vision go black as his entire body was fiercely dragged downwards by an enormous force, not allowing him to resist in the slightest. Rumble. Not long after Xianxia vanished from the ground, the 300m tall sword tomb steel fell into the black hole that seemed like a whirlpool and completely vanished. Gales raged and sandstorms roared. In practically an instant, the place was already covered in a thick layer of sand, and no trace of Xianxia or the sword tomb steel could be found. After an unknown amount of time, the scene before Xianxia's eyes changed. The heaven and earth revolved as all the pressure upon him vanished, and when he opened his eyes to look, he'd actually appeared within a spacious great hall. This hall was exceedingly spacious and magnificent, yet extremely desolate. Everywhere was filled with ancient marks, like broken tables, chairs, pedestals, and stone pillars. Yet most of it was, instead, bones and corpses. Xianxia didn't misjudge. Innumerable bones filled the hall, scattered everywhere. Amongst the bones were some residual swords, blades, and clothes that had all been corroded and were rotten. There are no windows or doors all around the hall. Could it be that these bones were all people who were trapped to death here? Xianxia's heart sank as he saw this. Gotcha! Xianxia had only just raised his foot when he'd shattered a skeleton. It seemed to be utterly decayed, and a light step caused it to transform into powder. Why is it like this? Could it be that these bones have already been here for countless years? Xianxia was secretly shocked, as people who were able to enter this place were surely cultivators, without a doubt. Moreover, the lifespans of cultivators were extremely long, and even if the body were to decay, the bones could be preserved for a long time. However, these bones shattered upon impact, and had obviously been dead for countless years. Gotcha! Gotcha! Xianxia moved hesitantly around the entire hall. He wanted to find some valuable clues, as he didn't want to be trapped alive in here. People of diverse origins had died here, and they seemed to not be from the same batch. Some were from an ancient time, and some bones were comparatively harder. They were of a great variety and diversity, and they could be discerned based on the extent of decay of their clothes. There were even some clothes that fully consisted of magic treasures and were refined from various treasures of the heavens and the earth, yet after a long period of time, they were unable to withstand the corrosion of time and had become utterly decayed. Clang! Xianxia picked up a sword that was fully covered in rust from a pile of bones, and he'd only just picked it up when it transformed into fragments that fell all over the ground. Unfortunately, this sword was obviously an extremely formidable magic treasure. Yet under the passage of time, it had already transformed into ash that drifted to transform into a pile of dust on the ground. Decay. Eternal. In the heavens and the earth, is there anyone that's able to win eternal life and exist forever? Xianxia stared blankly at the surroundings, and a desolate and helpless feeling started destroying his mind. The path of cultivation was vague, insubstantial, and boundlessly long. Exactly how many years must one walk on the path of cultivation before being able to become a heavenly immortal and achieving immortality? Cultivators were able to survive for thousands and 10,000s of years. Yet if they were unable to overcome the numerous heavenly tribulations, they would still transform into a cup of dirt and scatter with the wind. Having the same lifespan as the heavens and the earth, how could it possibly be as easy as it said? Xianxia shook his head. He suddenly felt to have completely lost interest in everything, not wanting to do anything and not having any thoughts. He was immediately shocked and struggled out from this desolate and lonely feeling, and a trace of astonishment emerged within his heart. Who? My Tao heart has been tempered to be extremely firm since long ago, yet so many negative feelings actually emerged within my heart. Obviously, someone is playing tricks from the shadows. Xianxia's heart constricted. The 8 Netharism flying swords swished out to ceaselessly swim around his surroundings. At the same time, he was secretly vigilant of the surroundings. Whoosh! A chilly wind suddenly blew within the empty hall, blowing to the point the bones on the ground emitted cracking sounds that caused one to feel a chill run down one's spine. You've awoken from the nirvana realm so quickly? An immature and clear voice sounded out, and accompanying the voice was a 10 centimeters little person that had an extremely handsome face, sword-shaped brows and starry eyes, and wore white clothes. When he appeared before Xianxia, he sat cross-legged in midair, and his body seemed to be even smaller, like a portion of a thumb. Xianxia couldn't help but be shocked inwardly. He actually didn't notice how this handsome little person had approached him. After all, there were still 8 Netharism flying swords guarding around him. Keep away these metal scraps. If I wanted to hurt you, you'd have probably died long ago. The handsome little person crossed his arms before his chest as he spoke proudly, and his voice was filled with disdain. Who are you? Xianxia knew as well that since this little thing was able to disregard the defense of the 8 Netharism baleful swords and instantly appear before him, continuing to defend against the little thing would be of no use. He put away the flying swords immediately, yet he was extremely vigilant in his heart. The innumerable corpses here might have been killed by this little fellow. Me? The handsome little person seemed to have been scratched where it itched. His spirits rose as he quickly stood up with his hands behind his back, and his white clothes fluttered with the wind as he said in a reserved manner, I'm the soul of the ancient Nirvana sword. I followed my master to eliminate evil and swept through the world for 10,000 years. I looked down on the entire world and stood supremely above all. You can call me Lord Ling Bai. Xianxia felt it to be slightly funny, as hearing the 10 centimeters tall little person brag about how formidable he was with a solemn expression caused Xianxia to feel slightly amused. Hey, aren't you shocked? The handsome little person frowned as he berated. Shocked? Shocked about what? Xianxia asked in astonishment. The nerves of the handsome little person's forehead jerked. I've spoken so much. Could it be that you didn't hear a single sentence clearly? I heard it clearly. You're the soul of the ancient Nirvana sword, and you're called Lord Ling Bai. Right, you gave yourself this nickname, right? Xianxia nodded and spoke casually. Gave myself the nickname. The handsome little person covered his forehead with his hand, and he had a pained expression. How can you be like this? I'm the soul of the Nirvana sword. Oh, it does indeed sound extremely formidable. Xianxia nodded once more. The body of the handsome little person stiffened and he almost fell down from midair. His little face was black like the bottom of a frying pan as he gnashed his teeth and said, You go too far. Detestable. Too detestable. All the others that have entered the Sword Tomb Nirvana realm were reverent and respectful to me, bowing their heads as they yearned for me to guide them in some sword techniques. Yet you said that I gave myself this nickname and said that I seemed to be extremely formidable. How can you humiliate me like this? Sword Tomb Nirvana realm? Xianxia looked at the surroundings in wonder. The face of the handsome little person fiercely twitched. He was unable to restrain the flames of rage in his heart any longer and he roared. Can you not change the topic? It's extremely impolite. Xianxia said apologetically, I was wrong. You're indeed extremely formidable. Go ahead and continue. This attitude is too perfunctory, right? The strength of the handsome little person seemed to have been completely extracted, and he sat down in midair, wanting to cry, yet had no tears. The mentality of the handsome little person was no different than a 6 or 7-year-old child. He blindly wanted to imitate the bearing of an expert, but when it was paired with his immature face and voice, it instead gave people an amusing and cute feeling. This caused Xianxia to recall his younger brother, Chen Hao. Regretfully, due to the constraints of their life, the childhood of Chen Hao was similar to his, cultivating bitterly and training in the sword day in and day out. Chen Hao was intelligent and obedient, not to mention being mischievous. He didn't even joke before. "Lord Ling Bai," Xianxia called out. The handsome little person was sulking, and he pursed his lips when he heard this, then muttered, "Don't call me Lord Ling Bai. I feel that you're mocking me. I feel this name is disagreeable as well." Xianxia agreed deeply and said, "Why don't I call you Ling Bai?" The handsome little person waved his hand powerlessly. "Do as you like. Exactly what place is this sword tomb nirvana realm? Can I walk out of this place?" Xianxia looked at the surroundings and asked. "No." Ling Bai shook his head. As he raised his head, a trace of burning desire appeared within his clear and pitch-black eyes. "Do you think I don't want to go out? Sword tomb. Sword tomb. It's a place to bury swords. For the sake of protecting me, my master opened this nirvana space with a supreme divine ability, and it was all for the sake of preventing his enemies from capturing me. Opened up a space? This level of ability is too unbelievable." Xianxia muttered. Then he said suddenly, "Then how did I enter?" Ling Bai pointed at the pile of bones on the ground and said, "Oh, just like them. You touched the restrictions of the sword tomb and were moved in. Once you've entered, there's no exit, and you can only wither and die here. But so many cultivators have entered, yet none of them was your enemy? Don't misunderstand, what I'm saying is, how did you protect yourself to live until now?" Xianxia actually had too many questions in his heart. He knew that numerous restrictions, ruins, and spatial tiers that swallowed everything existed within the oceanic desert. Yet he just never imagined that he would be confined within it one day. His mood couldn't help but be slightly depressed and worried, and he desired to understand everything so that he could leave this damnable place as soon as possible. "I'm the soul of the Nirvana sword, and I fused with the Nirvana realm long ago. If I don't want to see someone, then no one is able to see me." As he spoke up to hear, the sulkiness in Ling Bai's heart was completely swept away, and he once again recovered his arrogant little appearance. Then he said loudly, "If it wasn't for me seeing that your comprehension ability isn't bad, I couldn't be bothered to meet you." She didn't dare offend this little fellow to the point he sulked again, and he said respectfully, "So that's how it is. I have eyes, yet didn't recognize a remarkable figure like you. A sin, such a sin. Fake. You're too fake." Although he said this, Ling Bai's little face still beamed. If it wasn't for worrying about his image, Ling Bai would have probably started cheering long ago. Truly a little fellow that really likes to be praised by others. She smiled in understanding and thought to himself, "Since I can't go out, then I'll first enter the abode to see Senior Jiyu, and maybe I'll be able to obtain a method to leave." When he thought up to here, She immersed his mind into the jade pendant in his palm, and at the same time, a strand of true essence and a strand of shaman energy poured into it in unison. OM. Accompanied by a chime that was beautiful like the chime of a bell, the jade pendant rose out from his hand to revolve as it floated in midair. Then tiny lights glowed brightly as an enormous opening was formed in the space, an opening that was deep and dark. It's really true. Senior Jiyu wasn't wrong. When I attain the Violet Palace realm in both body refinement and chi refinement, I'll be able to open the gate to the abode within the jade pendant. She felt a wave of excitement. What treasure is this? It's so miraculous. Ling Bai flew to stop before the opening with a swish. Then he curiously sized it up. "I want to go to a place. Do you want to go together?" She glanced at the little Ling Bai and asked. This little fellow called himself the soul of the ancient Nirvana sword, and if he were to allow Jiyu to see Ling Bai, Jiyu might be able to infer his origins. "Oh, are you inviting me?" Ling Bai said in a reserved manner, yet his eyes stared fixedly at the opening with a little appearance of a curious baby. Of course. Xianxia smiled. Ling Bai was filled with intelligence and his thoughts were clean to the point it was like a crystal that wasn't tainted with dust. And he was extremely likable. All right, then I'll accept your invitation. Only this once, and it's not to be taken as a precedent. Hey, why have you gone first? It's too impolite. Wait for me. Just like this. Xianxia and Ling Bai stepped into the opening successively. Not long after their figures vanished, the opening in space vanished as well. On the jade-green grassland that stretched as far as the eye could see, a vast and mighty river flowed with billowing waves that splashed water in all directions, and the scene stretched forward continuously to the point one couldn't see the end with a single glance. A mountain that pierced directly into the sky stood at the center of the river. It was solitary, towering, chilly, and entirely pitch black. Not a single blade of grass grew on it. Innumerable restrictions could be vaguely noticed to have been placed layer upon layer on it, and it emitted a terrifying aura that caused one's heart to palpitate. When he saw the scene before him, Xianxia recalled the scene when he came in the first time and he couldn't help but be dazed. At that time, my cultivation was still stagnated at the 3rd level of the congenital realm. Whereas now, not only has my chi refinement cultivation arrived at the 5th star of the Violet Palace realm, I've already condensed 5th Earth shaman markings in my body refinement and have mastered shaman energy. I already possess the qualifications to enter the 1st level of the Heaven Peak of Trails. Xianxia? Ha ha ha. You've come so quickly. Splash. Splash. Waves soared into the sky from the river as a rich and hoarse voice rumbled out. And accompanying this voice was a thin old man that stepped on the water as he walked out. Shockingly, it was Gu. Senior Gu. Xianxia yelled out with a trembling voice when he saw the familiar figure. Obviously, he was extremely excited in his heart. Not bad. You've already condensed the 5th Earth shaman marking. Gu sized up Xianxia with a glance and a trace of a rare smile appeared on his face. Xianxia said with a smile, I unexpectedly obtained some star soul meteorites. That's why I was able to advance in this short period of time. So that's what happened. Gu nodded, then said in realization, the universe stars layer body forging arts is extremely difficult to cultivate. I originally thought that you would need to spend a few years, but I never imagined that you'd actually acquire star soul meteorites. Your good luck is really great. Speaking of good luck, Xianxia suddenly recalled the infant Pixiu, and he asked, Senior Gu, where's Bai Kue? Gu pointed at the great river behind him and said, he hasn't eaten treasures for too long, and is sleeping at the bottom of the river. Nothing to eat, so he went to sleep? Xianxia didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He knew that the Pixiu was able to condense karmic luck and was a top auspicious beast in the heavens and the earth. However, it liked to eat the treasures of the world and took various treasures as food. Thus, in this empty abode it would naturally have to starve. Hey! Who are you, geezer? Ling Bai that followed behind Chun. She flew up to midair with a swish, then spoke loudly, as if he was expressing his displeasure for being neglected. Sword Soul! Gu couldn't help but be exclaim in surprise, and his gaze stared closely on Ling Bai, seeming to want to see through all Ling Bai's secrets. Ling Bai's face went pale. The deep eyes of the geezer before him revealed an experienced feeling of being able to see through everything, and it brought great pressure onto him. Nirvana Sword Dao. Oh, it ought to be the Sword Dao inheritance from the primordial era's Nirvana sword sect. If he possessed a sword soul, then the Sword Dao cultivation of the owner has already attained an advanced level and ought to possess the strength of a heavenly immortal. Gu nodded while absorbed in thought. Senior Gu recognizes his origins after all. Xianxia was delighted in his heart. How did you know? I seem to have never told you of my owner's origins. Right? Ling Bai's eyes sprang wide open and he had an expression of disbelief. Gu smiled indifferently and didn't say anything, and he instead asked Xianxia, where did you acquire this strand of sword soul from? His quality is pure and clear, and he has already accumulated all the Sword Dao inheritance of his master. Even heavenly immortals would break their heads trying to seize a treasure like this. So formidable? Even heavenly immortals would break their heads for it? Xianxia was shocked in his heart. and he spoke of everything he saw since he entered the oceanic desert right away. Spatial tiers, ruins, restrictions, sword tomb nirvana realm. Jiyu muttered for a short moment, then a bright glow suddenly flashed within his eyes. It wouldn't be the battlefield of fiends and immortals, right? How do you know this as well? The little Ling Bai cried out once more, and the gaze he shot at Jiyu already carried a trace of reverence. Jiyu smiled lightly and ignored this little fellow once again, and he said, "Your 7th gold sword bamboo hasn't been refined yet, right? Pass it to me. Enter the heaven peak of trials first, and when you come out, I'll give you a great pleasant surprise." As he spoke, Jiyu glanced faintly at Ling Bai. "No!" Ling Bai seemed to have noticed something was not right, and he shouted out in fear, "I won't yield to any weapon. In that way, I'll be confined and unable to come out any longer." Xianxia was in a slightly difficult position. He rather liked the 1-meter-tall little person, Ling Bai, and he naturally didn't want to bind Ling Bai into an icy cold weapon. Jiyu shook his head and said helplessly, "Since it's like this, then I won't help you. I originally intended to use soulfuse arts to allow you to have a body that can cultivate, little fellow. But now it would seem like soulfuse arts." Jiyu hadn't finished speaking when he was interrupted by Ling Bai's shocked cry. "You are actually capable of using soulfuse arts? That's the technique that I've been dreaming of for 10,000 years. What's soulfuse arts?" Xianxia stared blankly at the scene before him. He desperately pondered within his mind, yet was unable to recall any clue related to soulfuse arts. It was even to the extent that it was the first time that he'd heard of it. "Stupid. You've never even heard of soulfuse arts?" Ling Bai said swiftly. "It's a miraculous equipment refinement technique that's able to allow a soul to have a magic treasure as its body and cultivate, just like cultivators to ascend the road to the Grand Tao." "Is that true?" Xianxi's heart shook greatly, as the ability to allow magic treasures to cultivate like cultivators and ascend the Grand Tao could only be described as heaven-defying. "It's true." Jiyu nodded and said, "This type of technique only exists in the possession of almighty figures of the primordial era. It's been lost and destroyed for a long time. It's normal that you've never heard of it. However, although this technique is formidable, a magic treasure wanting to become a heavenly immortal like a human is instead extremely difficult. Even during the primordial era, there were only an extremely small handful of magic treasures that were able to realize the Grand Tao. But isn't this a form of hope? I was originally the soul of an immortal sword that was cleansed and tempered by my master's supreme sword Tao, and my foundation is exceedingly solid. How could I possibly let this good luck slip by?" A wisp of an extremely firm sheen appeared on Ling Bai's little face as he spoke word for word. "When my master fell, I vowed that I would surely cultivate. I would surely step onto the Grand Tao, and in the end, I would kill his enemies and avenge my master." At this moment, Xianxia seemed to have seen his own shadow on Ling Bai, and it formed a strong resonance. Wasn't his diligent and bitter cultivation for the sake of avenging his grandfather and the entire Chen clan? Wasn't it for the sake of becoming a heavenly immortal and meeting his mother? "So you agree?" asked Jiyu slowly. "Senior, please transform me." Ling Bai descended to the ground with a swish. Then he knelt on the floor with a respectful and devout expression. Jiyu glanced at Xianxia, who stared blankly without speaking at the side. "Do you want to accept him? The might of the 7th gold sword bamboo will become stronger and stronger after it possesses this little fellow." How could Xianxia be unwilling? He withdrew the 7th gold sword bamboo right away and passed it to Jiyu. "Go on, enter and pass the first level of the heaven peak of trials and cultivate properly for a while. It isn't too late to leave this place once your strength has increased to the point that it's sufficient to kill those 7 people." Jiyu instructed indifferently. "Leave." Xianxia said in pleasant surprise, "Senior, you have a way to break open the sword tomb nirvana realm? Kid, why so many questions? I asked you to go, so go. Don't bother me." Jiyu emitted a rare smile as he scolded. Then he swung his sleeve, bringing Ling Bai along to enter into the river and vanish. "After I pass the first level of the heaven peak of trials, cultivating 3 days within it is only equivalent to 1 day in the outside world. It's able to allow me to increase my strength once again in an extremely short amount of time. Next year, during the Dragon Lake City's Hidden Dragon rankings, I still have to go visit Duanmuze and the others. Most importantly, I have to go visit Chen Hao. I wonder if he is well in the Wandering Cloud Sword sect? Xianxia took a deep breath and he gazed towards the solitary mountain that stood at the center of the river. Then he didn't hesitate any longer. The tip of his foot tapped on the ground before his body flew towards the mountain like an arrow that left the bow. Rumble. A myriad of concealed and traceless restrictions were activated in the surroundings of the pitch-black and solitary mountain, and they suddenly emitted a wave of explosive rumbling sounds. Then an exceedingly terrifying suction force surged out from within, and it was like an ancient behemoth that had opened its bloody mouth, utterly not allowing any resistance as it instantly swallowed Xianxia. On the vast expanse of ground, rocks and soil continued without end, and the entire heaven and earth was a misty earthen yellow. Xianxia stepped on the ground, and as he felt the heavy feeling that came from beneath his feet, he couldn't help but be shocked in his heart. What dense fifth earth energy! This place is the first level of the heaven peak of trials? Xianxia glanced all around, and suddenly, an aged and clear voice sounded in his ears. Fifth Earth Realm. Persist for 3 hours under the siege of 6-winged sandworms. The more 6-winged sandworms that are killed, the more rewards that shall be obtained. One who has cultivated the universe Starslayer bodyforging arts, you can acquire my divine ability Grand Astral Palm. If you're able to kill 9,900 6-winged sandworms with your 5th Earth Shaman energy. Grand Astral Palm? Xianxia's heart thumped. After one of the school of Fiend God Body Refinement cultivated shaman energy, one could cultivate various extremely terrifying divine abilities that were able to manipulate anything in the world and possesses exceedingly great might. For example, Heavenly Transformation, Mountain Transforming Fist, and Glazed Gold Body were all great divine abilities that were well-renowned. The last sentence that voice from before spoke was obviously for me. Right? I've cultivated the universe Starslayer bodyforging arts, and it is equivalent to possessing the qualifications to inherit the mantle of Senior Fushi. Unlike the other cultivators that trespassed into the abode, I will only be knocked down within the first level of the Heaven Peak of Trials and don't have to worry about losing my life. Xianxia swiftly thought about all the information he obtained from Jiyu. Since it's like this, then I'll go for it. No matter how formidable the 6-winged sandworms are, I must at least fight until the end and fight until I'm exhausted. I must obtain that Grand Astral Palm divine ability. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 8 Netharism flying swords appeared out of thin air to hover around Xianxia, and they swam about as they flickered with sword aura. I have no knowledge of the 6-winged sandworms now, so I'll first kill them with sword techniques, and once I've clearly found out the flaws of these fellows, I'll use shaman energy. Bang, bang, bang. The moment when Xianxia was pondering, a wave of dense footsteps that were like thunder abruptly sounded out in the distance, and it seemed like a roll call on the battlefield before the myriad of troops rumbled as they dashed over. The heavens and the earth shook as a roiling yellow mist that was almost 300 m tall splashed up into existence. This is? Xianxia's eyes squinted. Within the roiling mist of dust, enormous monsters surged out like a flood. They were like tigers, yet not tigers, like leopards, yet not leopards, enormous like mammoths and entirely ochre yellow. Their bloody eyes were like lanterns that emitted a fierce light, with 6 wings that grew out of their backs, and they possessed 4 large hooves that were like 4 enormous pillars. The monsters moved madly with a thunderous speed. Their footsteps caused the earth to quake, and their entire bodies emitted a monstrous and fierce aura. In practically an instant, sounds of footsteps that seemed like roiling tidewater sounded out uniformly from all directions as they moved with formidable impetus. Those are the 6-winged sandworms? Xianxia's eyes squinted. He wasn't afraid in his heart, and strands of roiling battle intent that was like lava arose instead. Swoosh! Xianxia utilized the divine windwing flight. He was like a gust of wind, a bolt of lightning, as he instantly arrived atop a 300 m tall mountain that was over 5 kilometers away. When faced with the 6-winged sandworms that came from all directions, fighting in a passive position on the ground was no different than courting death. Roar! 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 The surrounding hundreds of six-winged sandworms opened their bloody mouths as they howled and roared, trampling on the rocks and causing rumbling sounds as they pounced towards Xianxia. Their bodies were enormous, yet their speeds were shocking. It was only an instant before they'd already charged to arrive before Xianxia. Die! Xianxia's body floated, transforming in a strand of indistinct and traceless wind, and the 8 Netharism flying swords surrounded his body as he charged head-on into the group of 6-winged sandworms. The 8 Netharism flying swords were all top-grade yellow-rank magic treasures that were exceedingly sharp, and it even contained a gale of wind Dao insight, thus its might was incomparably terrifying. The 3 6-winged sandworms that charged at the front didn't even have the time to react before being minced by the 8 Netharism flying swords. Severed limbs and pieces of flesh scattered all over the ground. Hiss! 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 The sword lights were strong and vigorous as they flickered and surrounded Xianxia, and they were simply like a storm formed from a myriad of sharp blades that swept out in all directions and swerved about madly. Everywhere they passed, miserable cries rose and fell, severed limbs and bones scattered up into the air, and the scene was extremely bloody. Kill! The battle intent in Xianxia's chest surged as he massacred wantonly. Yet in his mind, he couldn't help but recall the traces of sword Dao true essence that he observed on the sword tomb steel. Gradually, his sword technique became more and more sharp, more and more swift, and it was even suffused with a strand of faint nirvana insight as it easily swept through everything with fierce killing intent and possessed extreme destructive force. Ling Bai's master was formidable as expected. He just engraved sword tomb on the steel, yet it allowed me to enjoy boundless benefits after observing it. If I'm able to fully master the Nirvana sword Dao, then my sword technique will surely be able to rise a level. Swish! Hundreds of 6-winged sandworms were completely wiped out, yet even more 6-winged sandworms gushed over from the distance. They were dense in number and seeming like tidewater that stretched beyond what the eye could see. Kill! Xianxia didn't dare think too much. He charged into the group of beasts and massacred wantonly as he carefully observed them, as he wanted to discover the weak point and fatal point of the 6-winged sandworms. Utilizing shaman energy to kill 9,900 6-winged sandworms was a mission that was practically impossible to complete for Xianxia. After all, he'd only just mastered shaman energy, and he still extremely lacked practice in the utilization and execution of shaman energy. Moreover, he hadn't mastered even a single divine ability and could only use his grand collapsing fist in battle. Most importantly, if he didn't utilize true essence, he would be unable to utilize the divine windwing flight, and this would cause his speed to slow down greatly. Under the attack of the 6-winged sandworms that were spread out all over, losing his speed would cause the pressure upon him to increase greatly without a doubt. So, if he was able to grasp the weak point and fatal point of the 6-winged sandworms, he would be able to make the battle become much easier, and annihilating 9,900 6-winged sandworms with shaman energy wouldn't be impossible. Xianxia's heart sank as he abruptly noticed that 6-winged sandworms that gushed over from the surroundings once more had become much stronger. No matter if it was in speed, strength, or the hardness of their bodies, it was all much more formidable than before. The 6-winged sandworms that originally only required a single sword strike to destroy instead required 2, 3, or more strikes now, after the time for an incense stick to burn. Xianxia had killed no less than a few thousand 6-winged sandworms in this land that was filled with an earthen yellow color. However, up until now, it was impossible for him to swiftly and wantonly kill them like before. Bang! 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 The sword lights were swift, fierce, and sharp, and under the siege of the 8 Netharism flying swords, only one 6-winged sandworm was killed after the time of 3 breaths. These monsters with savage appearances seemed to have obtained a qualitative transformation. Their skin was hard like stones, and their strengths had even risen explosively by over 10 times. When they jointly attacked, just that brutal aura would cause the pressure one felt to increase abruptly. Damn it! If the strengths of these fellows were to continue growing like this, then not to mention using shaman energy, I wouldn't be able to withstand them just like this. The more he fought, the heavier Xianxia's heart felt, and up to this moment, he still didn't discover the fatal weak point on the 6-winged sandworms. If I knew earlier, I'd have used shaman energy to fight. Never mind, it isn't too late to use it now. Xianxia secretly gritted his teeth before his body swiftly flashed out, and he arrived at an area with comparatively sparse amounts of six-winged sandworms and put away his flying swords. Body like a bow, fist like an arrow. Xianxia circulated his shaman energy and fiercely smashed a grand collapsing fist onto the six-winged sandworm. Bang! An enormous bang sounded out, and the body of the six-winged sandworm that was enormous like a mammoth instantly shattered into powder, and it was simply like a piece of paper. So formidable! The might of the grand collapsing fist that's utilized with shaman energy is actually even more terrifying than flying swords. Xianxia's spirits rose in his heart. He didn't hesitate to smash out his fists like raindrops, forming a myriad of fist silhouettes, and everywhere they passed, the six-winged sandworms all vanished without a trace after emitting a bang. It made a clean sweep. The time for only a few breaths had passed when a few tens of six-winged sandworms had shattered and vanished. In this type of satisfying battle, Xianxia's skill in utilizing shaman energy became even more complete. Collapse, mince, cleave, smash, strike. The shaman energy poured into his fist by a special method, and its lethality grew stronger and stronger, whereas the shaman energy that was used up grew lesser and lesser. Practice makes perfect. After one attained a skilled level in any technique, one was able to easily utilize it as if it didn't require any effort, like it could be used freely, and it looked to be utilized at will, yet its might was extremely terrifying. Xianxia had comprehended a complete Wind Dao insight long ago, and when combined with the grand collapsing fist that was circulated with shaman energy, its might was strong to the point it was even able to shatter a graded magic treasure with a single strike. However, as time flowed by, the six-winged sandworms that gushed over from every direction became more and more formidable. It caused Xianxia to feel it had become even more difficult, and he had to increase the force of his attacks. 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. Gradually, the shaman energy between Xianxia's flesh and blood showed signs of drying up. The strenuous feeling grew more and more stronger, and he couldn't help but become anxious in his heart. Because up to now, he was more than half the distance away from the goal of killing 9,900 six-winged sandworms. Bang! Xianxia's back was struck fiercely, and he instantly tumbled out over 20 meters, and he hadn't even dropped to the ground when he was besieged by over 10 six-winged sandworms. Those sharp claws straightaway left behind tens of bloody scars that were a terrifying sight. These scars recovered within the blink of an eye, as after Xianxia's body refinement cultivation attained the Violet Palace realm, he was already able to regrow limbs, and these little injuries were utterly unable to affect Xianxia's movements. However, if this went on, the consumption of his shaman energy would be greater and greater. Ah! Another 10 minutes passed and Xianxia abruptly roared into the sky, and his face was filled with an insane and persistent expression. Not even 10% of the shaman energy between his blood, flesh, and skin remained. Yet he was still 2,000 plus six-winged sandworms away from his goal of obtaining the divine ability, Grand Astral Palm. If this continued, then even if he completely consumed all his shaman energy, he would still be unable to complete his goal. Intense unwillingness flowed throughout his entire body, stimulating Xianxia to the point his entire body burned, and his handsome face became warped and savage as well. I must obtain the Grand Astral Palm. Those 6 bastards of the Su clan are still standing in my way outside. I can't continue hiding like this and suffer grievances like this. Kill. No one can obstruct me from advancing. Kill. I want to become strong. I want to fight until the end. I want to attain my goal. In the earthen yellow heaven and earth, 6-winged sandworms died endlessly, yet more were born. They became even more formidable, and their auras became even more fierce and stronger as well. The numerous 6-winged sandworms in the surroundings endlessly succeeded their fallen allies to besiege Xianxia. He was already unable to move. His strength of struggling grew weaker and weaker as well, but the battle intent in his gaze instead became even more insane and even more firm. He wouldn't admit defeat. Asking him to give up now was undoubtedly asking him to give up his persistence and desire. In this lethargic state, he felt every inch of his blood, every inch of his flesh, every inch of his tendons, and every single pore shouting, yearning for the strength to become strong, a yearning that came from the depths of the soul. Bang! Xianxia felt as if his soul had left his body and floated high above in the sky to look down, and on the ground was boundless six-winged sandworms that surged over like tidewater. Whereas threads of misty earthen yellow gas were effused from the vast expanse of land, they curled upwards and were faintly visible, and they emitted a pure and thick aura. He stretched out his hand to scoop them, and those earthen yellow gases seemed to have been roused, and they were even more alike to a group of sharks that had smelt blood, flowing towards him from every direction. Threads condensed into strands, strands condensed into streams. Swish! Swish! Xianxia suddenly awoke from this profound feeling, and only now did he notice that the pure and thick fifth earth energy in the heaven and earth was madly flowing into his body, and it was like spring water as it moistened his dried and starving flesh, blood, skin, and tendons. His shaman energy that had dried up originally was slowly gushing out as well, then rose and steadily climbed in amount. It was like a withered tree coming upon spring and obtaining life once more. Fifth Earth Realm. Fifth Earth Shaman marking. As he felt the pure and thick Fifth Earth energy that ceaselessly flowed towards him and the shaman energy between his flesh, blood, and skin that rose explosively without end, Xianxia instantly understood in his heart. This place was obviously the cultivation sacred ground that the master of the abode had prepared for his disciple. No wonder Senior G, you asked me to attain the Violet Palace realm in body refinement before allowing me to enter. So it turns out that this Fifth Earth realm was actually a type of test and trial, yet was also able to greatly benefit the shaman energy in the body. Kill! An explosive shout that was like a dragon's roar and like a tiger's howl sounded out. Xianxia's feet stepped on the ground and his body seemed to have become rooted deep within the thick and heavy earth, and he'd flawlessly conformed to the Fifth Earth energy and merged into one with it. At this moment, he felt himself to have become the ruler of this earthen yellow-colored world and was immovable like a mountain. Striking out with his fist caused a variety of shapeless whirlpools to be formed in the surrounding space, and with his fist as the origin, the Fifth Earth energy, air, and light within 300 meters converged. It seemed as if this strike had completely sucked this area of space dry, and even space collapsed inwardly. Collapse! He accumulated force like a drawn bow, then exerted the force like a thunderclap. A fist print that was glazed and translucent flew out, emitting howls in the air that were like the tide, and it was like a savage wild beast that bit the eardrums apart. This was the explosive sound of tearing apart the sky that could only be formed when vast energy was condensed into a single point. Pooh! 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 Bloody holes of equal size appeared on the bodies of 12 six-winged sandworms that were in a straight line. Their expressions froze on their faces, and they seemed to have not understood what had happened. Pooh! 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 Right at this instant, Xianxia had once again struck 2 punches out towards the space before him. Due to the sounds being too concentrated, it sounded as if there was only one pooh, and in the group of 6-winged sandworms, 2 straight rows of bloody holes appeared at the same time. Unparalleled penetrative force, smashing through like smashing rotten wood. Xianxia had only smashed out a mere 3 punches, yet 36 six-winged sandworms had crashed onto the ground. They all had a bloody hole the size of a bowl on their bodies. Satisfying. Xianxia's battle intent was like a hurricane that was piercingly cold and flowed freely. He felt his entire body was filled with boundless energy that was like surging floodwater that had been accumulated for a long time and needed to be poured out. Whereas the 6-winged sandworms that gushed over from all over had become the target for him to pour this energy. Kill. Xianxia started to go on the counter-offensive and slaughter. At the bottom of the vast and surging river, Jiyu suddenly raised his head as a trace of a smile appeared within his eyes. Good work, kid. You've finally comprehended the profundity of the Fifth Earth realm. The divine ability, Grand Astral Palm, of Master can once more see the light of day. Clink. In his hand, the 1-meter-long 7th gold sword bamboo emitted a chirr, and it seemed as if there was something alive wriggling within it. The comprehension ability of this little sword soul is not bad either. He has already started to fuse his soul with the sword so quickly. Jiyu lowered his head to look, Layers of dark light oscillated on the pitch-black body of the seventh gold sword bamboo, and it seemed like ripples that rippled without end. According to this speed, it will take less than half a year for him to successfully fuse his soul. Roar! A furry little beast that seemed like a lion, yet wasn't a lion, and was covered in snow-white and soft fur howled restlessly and uneasily in Ji-Yu's embrace. It looked eagerly at the seventh gold sword bamboo as a strand of shiny saliva flowed out of the corners of its mouth. Its mouth was watering, as it hadn't eaten for more than a year. It was so hungry, so hungry. Bai Kuei! Ji-Yu's hand pressed onto the infant Pishio's head. Then he scolded with a smile. When Chun-Shi goes out, I'll ask him to bring you along to eat all the treasures in the world and satisfy your gluttony. Woo-woo. Bai Kuei stretched out his white and tender little tongue to lick Ji-Yu's palm before crying out in delight. Obviously, he'd understood Ji-Yu's words and was extremely intelligent. On his back, the mysterious Fifth Earth Shaman marking was suffused by a misty earthen yellow sheen, and the Fifth Earth energy in the heaven and the earth continuously flowed into it. Then it transformed into powerful Fifth Earth Shaman energy that howled within Chun-Shi's blood, flesh, and skin. Under these circumstances, Chun-Shi didn't have to consider his defense, and the grand collapsing fist was executed by him to become even more swift and fierce, and its might was naturally stronger. Pooh! 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 Batch after batch of six-winged sandworms fell onto the ground. When swept through by the fist prints that were condensed to the limit, it was simply like sweeping through dry leaves, and it crushed everything. It's too formidable. No wonder it's said that between cultivators of the same cultivation, the school of fiend god body refinement crushed all cultivators in the school of chi refinement. Chun-Shi became more and more excited, and he even felt that when he smashed out with his fist. Even a Golden Hall realm cultivator wouldn't dare bear the brunt of it. Time flew by. Chun-Shi was like an invincible master that was immersed in battle, and he'd completely forgotten the time and everything else in his surroundings. After an unknown period of time. No more. Chun-Shi raised his head in disappointment before looking at the surroundings. Yet it was quiet, deathly silent, and there wasn't a single six-winged sandworm in the earthen yellow world. It was even to the extent that the severed limbs and remains on the ground had vanished already, and the heaven and earth were still boundless with thick earth that stretched out continuously. It was exactly alike to when he first came in. OM. It was at this moment that a wave of strange buzzing sounded out in the heaven and earth, and the thick earth on the ground shot out from the ground to converge together, and it instantly condensed into an enormous figure that was almost 33 kilometers in height. The figure wore linen clothes and had bare feet, and had long hair that draped across his shoulder. As the figure stood in the heaven and earth, the figure's body was ancient and magnificent, emitting a wave of desolate aura that was shocking. An earthen yellow halo that was 7 hectares in size and emitted a myriad of tiny lights was condensed atop his head, and the halo was like an exceedingly enormous talisman. The stones, stars, ground, mountains, everything in the talisman revolved eternally like the orbit of stars, seeming to be slow, yet the scenes changed a myriad of times within an instant, changing in countless ways. When faced with this enormous 33 kilometers tall figure, a tiny feeling like that of an ant arose unconsciously within Chun-Shi's heart as boundless reverence was born involuntarily. He wished for nothing more than to prostrate himself on the ground and kowtow. It was at this moment that a similar figure surged out with a bang within Chun-Shi's sea of consciousness, and besides the scene surrounding the figure being different, it was exactly similar to the figure before his eyes. The two figures seemed to raise their heads at the same time while being a myriad of years apart and looked at each other from afar, and at the instant their gazes met, a miraculous thing occurred. Bang! It seemed as if the heavens and earth were collapsing, and Chun-Shi felt as if his entire soul was shuddering and roaring as strands of ancient thoughts seemed like a great river as it surged into his soul before fusing into Chun-Shi's memories. The impartment has begun. At the bottom of the river, Ji-Yu raised his head. His gaze was distant as if he could see everything within the Fifth Earth realm, and his expression was complicated, seeming to be gratified, seeming to be in anticipation, and seeming to be feeling grief. Grand astral palm, 1,000,000 years have passed. I wonder if anyone still remembers this divine ability now. His soul was trembling and stretching, and his consciousness had become obscure and blurred. She felt as if he'd arrived at a boundlessly vast starry sky. The array of stars were like a river that emitted a chilly radiance, and it flowed according to a profound orbit and seemed to be eternally undying. Suddenly, as if it was sucked by a terrifying energy that came from the chaotic time when the Earth was formed, the stars that covered the sky left their fixed orbit to converge and fuse. They formed an enormous palm that blotted out the heavens and the Earth as a myriad of stars converged within the palm. The striations on the palm was their circulation orbit, and they fluttered about. It was vast and mysterious. A single hand that covered the heavens. This enormous hand that was condensed from a myriad of stars slapped downwards. The innumerable towering mountains and vast rivers shattered into ash. The boundless sea withered and dried up. The perpetually vast Earth shattered and was obliterated, and numerous 50 million kilometers long rifts were ripped open in space. Kacha! The entire world was obliterated and vanished under this palm. She forgot to breathe. His scalp went numb, and he felt as if he'd fallen into an icy pit. The scene before his eyes caused infinite shock within Xi's heart. Whoosh! A chilly ray of starlight directly flew towards Shi. Then a bright light flashed as if a flicker, and it vanished without a trace. Whereas on the fifth Earth shaman marking on his back, an extremely tiny pattern that was difficult to find with the naked eye had appeared, and the markings of the pattern seemed to connect perfectly with the shaman markings. The Grand Tao is profound, and divine abilities are born from nature, born from deriving the boundless secrets of the heavens. Is it good fortune, or is it misfortune? To comprehend the heavens' Tao, one must stay true to one's heart, cultivate diligently and bitterly, and not let go of one's heart that yearns for the Tao. The voice was resonant and clear as the morning bell in a monastery as it resounded out in the heavens and the earth, and it became indistinct as it silently vanished. Shi's entire body shook as he suddenly awoke from the strange state. The corners of Shi's mouth held a smile. His appearance was serene, seeming to have been given a timely warning, and suddenly felt refreshed. He sat cross-legged on the ground as pieces of obscure and profound words and numerous lifelike scenes gushed out from his sea of consciousness. Grand Astral Palm. First level, Fifth Earth Realm. Second level, Second Wood Realm. Third level, Seventh Gold Realm. Fourth level, Third Fire Realm. Fifth level, 10th Water Realm. There were a total of 9 levels, but She was only able to see the cultivation technique for the first level, the Fifth Earth Realm. The remaining 8 levels were obstructed by a shapeless restriction that caused his vision to blur and be unable to see anything clearly. However, being able to obtain the inheritance of the divine ability, Grand Astral Palm, had already caused Shi to be exceedingly excited, and he didn't delay in the slightest before sitting down cross-legged and diligently studying and comprehending it. Divine abilities were extremely vast, and techniques were boundless. Divine abilities were the method used by the school of Fiend God Body Refinement to attain the Tao, whereas techniques were instead the method used by the school of Qi Refinement to attain the Tao. The two were on different paths, yet reached the same goal by different means, and they both pointed straight towards the source of the Grand Tao. The school of Fiend God Body Refinement used the body as a furnace of the heavens and the earth, and it deemed that the body was formed from tiny apertures. Every tiny aperture was a tiny universe that contained the heavens and the earth, and developing the worlds would allow them to become almighty. It was similar to the Buddhist principle, every grain of sand is another world. Body refinement was to rely on the myriad of things in the world to open the tiny apertures in the body and condense a variety of shaman markings, thereby possessing supreme divine abilities to blaze the heavens and obliterate the earth, to overturn rivers and seas, pluck the stars from the sky, and swallow the sun. For example, the universe stars layer body forging arts relied on the baleful chi of the stars in the universe to temper the body and open the tiny apertures before condensing star diagram shaman markings. The fifth earth shaman marking she condensed on his back was tempered from the fifth earth star's baleful chi, and it was able to collect shaman energy between the flesh, blood, and skin. At its source, shaman energy was actually a type of advancement of the body's strength, whereas the divine techniques were a type of profound method of utilizing shaman energy with the body as the foundation. After he recalled the cultivation technique of the first level of the Grand Astral Palm once more and confirmed he didn't make any mistakes, Xianxia started to cultivate. The shaman energy in his entire body boiled and howled between his flesh, blood, and skin, then followed along his arm to condense and circulate. Swoosh! An enormous palm that covered an area of 10 meters appeared out of thin air. The edges of the palm were like blades, and it was entirely twined by a powerful earthen yellow airflow. Innumerable dazzling stars circulated without end in the striations on the palm, and they flickered between brightness and dimness. At the instant the palm appeared, a heavy aura like a towering and lofty mountain spread out towards the surroundings with the enormous palm as the center, causing layer upon layer of ripples to undulate, and the thick earth on the ground was even pressed down upon by this aura to the point it cracked inch by inch. Bang! The enormous palm fiercely slapped down onto the ground, leaving behind a terrifying and enormous palm print, and the nearby ground even split open into cracks that were like spider webs. When he walked over to look closely, the palm print that remained on the ground was simply like a 5-finger chasm, and it was at least 100 meters deep. Bang! 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 Surging fifth earth energy violently swelled and shrank. It was like a towering mountain that seemed to be escorted by a myriad of stars, and the grand astral palm that covered an area of 10 meters successively smashed out over 10 enormous and terrifying holes on the ground and mountains. The mountains shook and the earth split apart. Instantly, Xianxia felt as if he possessed boundless force of annihilation, and a light pinch would be able to shatter a star and grab open the sun and moon. Of course, this was a type of misconception. Unless one ascended the extremity of the Grand Tao and mastered the quintessence laws of the heaven and earth otherwise, no one possessed the ability to obliterate the stars and the sun. But Xianxia had seen the might of the Grand Astral Palm. With a slap, the ground collapsed and the earth split apart explosively, whereas the stones and mountains crumbled inch by inch, and its might was formidable to an unbelievable level. Moreover, he'd only just cultivated it and the Grand Astral Palm was only 10 meters in area, and he couldn't even be considered to have achieved minor attainment. Along with the advancement of his cultivation, this great primordial divine ability that was inherited from the master of the manor would become even more formidable and terrifying. The fifth earth energy here is rich and plentiful, and it's simply inexhaustible. Cultivating here isn't inferior to cultivating with starsoul meteorites in the slightest. I have to make the best use of my time and properly improve my cultivation. Moreover, this fifth earth realm is the first level of the heaven peak of trials. According to what Senior Jiyu said, 3 days within here was equivalent to only 1 day in the outside world as the passage of time has become slow, and it's simple a heaven-defying assistance to cultivating. Furthermore, there's still half a year before the Dragon Lake City's Hidden Dragon Rankings competition next year. If I cultivate here during this half year, then it would be equivalent to cultivating for 1.5 years, and it's sufficient to advance my cultivation to another realm. Xianxia calculated in his heart. When he was at the congenital realm, wanting to cultivate and increase a bit of the strength of his body required absorbing an unknown amount of baleful chi from the stars, and it was exceedingly difficult. Whereas at the Violet Palace realm, after condensing shaman markings and converting shaman energy, strength could be increased without limit. And this was the benefit of the Violet Palace realm in body refinement. Right, there's one more thing I've forgotten. Xianxia slapped his forehead as he thought in his heart. Then his body abruptly vanished into thin air. Senior Jiyu. Xianxia stood on the bank of the surging river and shouted out. Whoosh! A wisp of bright light flew out from the river and Xianxia stretched out his hand to catch it. Shockingly, it was a jade slip. This is the Universe Starslayer Bodyforging Arts Violet Palace Realm Cultivation Technique. Take it and cultivate properly. I'm executing a technique to help the sword soul fuse with the 7th gold sword bamboo. Don't come disturb me if there's nothing urgent. The Universe Starslayer Bodyforging Arts Chen she obtained earlier only recorded the cultivation technique to advance to the Violet Palace realm, and the cultivation technique related to the 9 levels of the Violet Palace realm wasn't recorded on it. He'd come to see Jiyu right now precisely because of this, yet he never expected that Jiyu seemed to have guessed the reason he came since long ago. Without waiting for him to speak, Jiyu had tossed out the cultivation technique, And Chen, she couldn't help but be stunned as a wisp of warmth flowed out from his heart. Looks like Senior G, you had always been paying close attention to my cultivation. Swoosh! In the next moment, Chen, she appeared within the cultivation grounds of the first level of the Heaven Peak of Trials once again. After passing the first level of the Heaven Peak of Trials, he was already able to enter and leave at will. The Universe Stars Layer Body Forging Art's 9 levels of the Violet Palace realm was to open the tiny apertures on the body's skin and condense 9 shaman markings. The cultivation technique was divided into the 5th Earth Shaman Marking Chapter, the 2nd Wood Shaman Marking Chapter, the 7th Gold Shaman Marking Chapter, the 3rd Fire Shaman Marking Chapter, the 10th Water Shaman Marking Chapter. There were a total of 9 chapters. So it turns out that the Grand Astral Palm and the Universe Stars Layer Body Forging Arts complement each other, and only the combination of the two is able to produce a formidable might. That was close. If I didn't obtain the inheritance of the Grand Astral Palm in the 5th Earth realm earlier, then I would surely be extremely regretful. As he sat cross-legged on the ground and saw the content of the cultivation technique, Chen, she couldn't help but be shocked in his heart. The Grand Astral Palm's first level, the 5th Earth realm, cooperated with the 5th Earth Shaman marking, and the thicker the 5th Earth Shaman energy, the more formidable the Grand Astral Palm was. Similarly, the 2nd level, the 2nd Wood realm, cooperated with the 2nd Wood Shaman marking, and the 3rd level, the 7th Gold realm, cooperated with the 7th Gold Shaman marking. It could be said that if he wanted to cultivate the Grand Astral Palm to the perfection stage, then it couldn't do without the cultivation of the Universe Stars Layer Body Forging Arts. Who? Chen, she let out a long breath of foul air. He felt he was extremely fortunate, as he'd obtained a body refinement cultivation technique and a divine ability, and he wouldn't have the regret of lacking one of the two anymore. Amongst the 5 attributes in the heaven and earth, earth possessed great virtue from allowing things to grow on it. It gathered the quintessence of everything in the world. Chen, she didn't continue wasting time and started circulating his cultivation technique while sitting cross-legged. Only his figure was present within the earthen yellow world, silently sitting cross-legged there, and gradually, his figure seemed to fuse together with the sky, earth, and mountains. The 5th Earth energy in the world gushed towards him to pour into the 5th Earth Shaman markings on his back before converting into the small shaman energy streams between his flesh, blood, and skin. Everything was so peaceful. While Chen, she was cultivating, at the border of the oceanic desert that neighbored the rowdy grasslands, the mood of Su Dingy and the other 5 Su clan Golden Hall realm cultivators became even unhappier. I can't take it anymore. If this continues, I'm afraid I'll go mad. The red-robed bald fatty roared in depression, and he broke the dreary atmosphere. Junior brother Ding Wei, with this disposition of yours, you won't be able to cultivate to the intermediate stage of the Golden Hall realm even after another 10 years. Su Dingy frowned as he coldly glanced over and berated. The Golden Hall realm absorbed the energies of yin and yang in the heaven and earth to temper the true essence in the entire body, causing the yin and yang within it to blend together, promoting the generation of spirit and essence. It was divided into the initial stage, intermediate stage, advanced stage, and perfection stage. Obviously, the red-robed bald fatty called Su Dingwei possessed a cultivation around the initial stage of the Golden Hall realm. Su Dingwei seemed to be afraid of Su Dingy's power and influence, and he pursed his lips, yet didn't dare complain again. Su Dingy moved his gaze to descend onto the beautiful woman, and he asked, Junior Sister Dingru, have you sent out the voice transmission command token? Is there any news from the clan? I've already sent it out. The Patriarch has already sent out Martial Uncle Su Lung to hurry over here, and I presume it won't be a few days before he arrives. Su Dingru spoke slowly. Martial Uncle Su Lung. The expressions of the others became cold when they heard this. As one of the 6 great clans of Dragon Lake City, the Su clan was able to go against the 8 great sects and 3 great institutes not only because of its numerous clansmen, but also because there were over 10 Golden Core Realm elders holding the fort in the Su clan, and this was the Su clan's foundation for survival. So long as these elders were alive, the Su clan was unshakable. All of them who were Golden Hall realm cultivators only belonged to the central force of the Su clan, and only cultivators that had stepped into the Golden Core realm were able to become a Su clan elder that controlled authority and possessed an exceedingly lofty status. At the same time that Su Lung was a Golden Core realm cultivators, he was a Su clan elder, and he possessed an impressive reputation based on his strength. Why is it him? Su Dingwei's voice unconsciously became weaker. Obviously, he had quite a great deal of resentment and fear towards this elder Su Lung. How dare you? Your attitude is greatly disrespectful of martial uncle Su Lung, and if you dare talk nonsense once again, don't blame me for being hard on you. Su Dingyi's berated in a deep voice. Actually, Su Dingyi was unhappy in his heart as well. Su Lung originally possessed a cultivation similar to them, and they were all Golden Hall realm cultivators of the Ding generation, and his identity and status was even inferior to all of them. However, this situation completely turned around half a year ago. During a trip to gain experience and toughening, Su Lung unexpectedly entered into a mysterious ruins. No one knew what benefits he obtained from within, but when he returned to the clan, his cultivation had already advanced to the Golden Core realm from the initial stage of the Golden Hall realm in one go. This matter had instantly shocked the entire clan, and his status rose in line with this to enter into the ranks of the Su clan elders. Moreover, he was the youngest amongst all the elders, and had taken a great leap to become the legendary figure that was respected by countless Su clan disciples. Su Dingwei didn't go quiet again when he was berated this time, and his fat face was covered in an unwilling expression. Chasing down and killing Chun, she was a matter between us 6 brothers and sisters. If we're able to succeed, we can share a great portion of the treasures this kid obtained from the Sword Immortal's abode. But now that Su Lung has come, wouldn't we be doing all this for naught, and we'll get nothing in the end? A nearby middle-aged man with brows that were like 2 blades said in a low voice, "Martial Uncle Su Lung wouldn't keep all the treasures for himself, right? He won't? Su Dingyuan. Don't think that we don't know you've been currying favor with Su Lung in secret." Su Dingwei had a face full of disdain as he spoke. "That's a fucking lie." Su Dingyuan burst into rage. "I'm lying? Do you want me to take out some proof for you to see?" Su Dingwei stood in sharp opposition as he aggressively pushed Su Dingyuan into a corner. "You?" Su Dingyuan was angered to the point his chest rose and fell continuously, and his edge seemed to obviously become much weaker. Obviously, Su Dingwei's words had struck his Achilles heel. "Shut up." When he saw this, the nearby Su Dingyi didn't keep quiet any longer, and he emitted a cold and explosive shout. "Do both of you not respect me, this eldest senior brother of yours? Humph. Both of you only know how to engage in overt and covert struggles all day, and the entire Su clan had become filled with a foul atmosphere because of all of you pests." Su Dingwei and Su Dingyuan glared at each other. Then they shut their mouths resentfully. "But, Senior Brother Dingyi, we have to guard against this matter. If by any chance Martial Uncle Su Lung wants to forcibly seize all the treasures in the possession of that kid once he arrives, then wouldn't we have done all this for nothing? Once this matter spreads back to the clan, where would we put our faces?" The voice was soft-spoken, yet the owner was a rough and burly fellow that was tall and fierce. The man with an appearance of a scholar who hadn't spoken all along slowly nodded as he said, "Yes, Senior Brother Dinglong is right. I'm worried about this as well." One was Su Dinglong, the other Su Dingkong, and amongst the 6, only these 2 people spoke the least and kept silent all along the way. Only at this moment, when it related to their own benefit, did they speak out successively. Su Dingyi didn't continue putting on an act when he saw these 2 fellows who concealed their thoughts had spoken up, and he said with a bitter smile, "My head is aching as well. If it was before, I could still stand out and restrain him slightly, but Su Lung is already one of our Su clan's elders, and there's a great disparity between our statuses. If he wants to swallow all the treasures, then even I am helpless as well. I never imagined that I, Su Lung, would actually cause eldest senior brother's head to ache. Truly unexpected." It was at this moment that, accompanied by an icy cold voice that sounded out from extremely far away, a 300 long rainbow flew over to arrive before the 6 of them in the blink of an eye. This was a black-clothed young man whose corners of his mouth were thin like blades. His appearance was frosty, and his entire body was like a shocking sharp sword. The aura he emitted from his entire body caused the spirit energy of heaven-earth within an area of 5 kilometers to become extremely disordered and dispersed. "Greetings, Martial Uncle Su Lung." When they saw the black-clothed young man, Su Dingyi's group of 6 went stiff. Then they hurriedly stood up and bowed in greetings. "Humph!" Su Lung swept the 6 of them with his gaze, and he especially took an extra glance at Su Dingyi before saying slowly, "Don't worry. I've come here this time only to assist you 6 in capturing that little thief, Xianxia. As for whatever treasures, Su Lung, don't want it." Su Dingyi's group of 6 looked at each other. Although they felt Su Lung's words were extremely unpleasant to the ear, they still secretly heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts. Not seizing the treasures? Couldn't be better. I heard that little thief entered the oceanic desert. He is indeed extremely bold. But I've prepared since long ago as well, and I'm unafraid of the assaults of the sandstorms and gales. As he spoke, Su Lung tossed something out casually, and a large umbrella soared into the sky before suddenly enlarging to cover an area of over 30 meters and completely covering everyone. This umbrella-shaped magic treasure was completely suffused with gold lights, and innumerable runes that flickered with a bright light were drawn on the umbrella. 9 WYRMs that were indistinct swam about within it, and they emitted boundless might. 9 WYRM Earth Umbrella. Su Dingyi's group of 6 were shocked in their hearts. Then their eyes emitted traces of burning desire. This 9 WYRM Earth Umbrella was an intermediate-grade Earth-rank magic treasure, and it was refined with Venus-Earth iron as the skeleton, and there were even 9 souls of 1,000-year-old evil WYRMs sealed within it. The 9 WYRMs were linked together, and it possessed an exceedingly shocking defense. Just its value was comparable to over 500,000 kilograms of spirit liquid. Let's go. I still have a cauldron of medicinal pills that are being refined right now, and I have to hurry back after we capture this kid. Su Lung flicked his sleeve, and a cloud that had an area of over 30 meters supported everyone up before swiftly charging towards the oceanic desert. Flowers bloomed and fell. Spring turned to autumn. To cultivators, time was like an arrow with wings, and half a year passed in an instant. But in the first level of the Heaven Peak of Trials, due to the laws of time being different, an entire year and a half had already passed. During this period of time, Xianxia followed an extremely regular schedule. Qi refinement, visualization, body refinement, sword cultivation. When his thoughts were truly distracted, he would use his finger as a brush and the earthen ground as the paper, and he would draw talismans and write words. Thus, he didn't feel lonely. He'd obtained 13 talisman crafting jade slips from the southern barbaric nether domain's sword immortal's abode, and during this half a year of devoted comprehension, he'd achieved great advancements. The talisman markings he casually drew on the ground had already attained the ranks of the 9th grade, and he was only a step away from being able to construct talisman formations and becoming a talisman formation master. Talismans were divided into 9 grades, and the first-grade talismans were also called basic talismans. Every talisman crafting apprentice needed to master the crafting of basic talismans in order to be able to craft even more advanced talismans. Talismans were also divided into yin and yang based on their attribute. If differentiated in detail, they could be further divided into the 5 main categories of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The crafting of any talisman couldn't escape from being related to yin, yang, or the 5 elements, and basic talismans were no exception. The learning of the structure of talisman markings started from basic talismans. In other words, every basic talisman represented a type of talisman marking structure. Whereas basic talismans were differentiated by the 5 elements, and every element's structure was different. It could be said that there were a myriad, boundless amounts of structures. This also made clear that complete talismans were numbered in the millions, and it was utterly impossible to possess knowledge of the crafting of all basic talismans. But, so long as one was able to draw a complete talisman marking structure on a piece of talisman paper, then it could be called as a first-grade talisman. Drawing 2 complete talisman marking patterns and allowing them to cooperate with each other as if they were breathing was instead able to be called a second-grade talisman. Repeatedly adding on successively, when one could draw 9 complete talisman marking structures on a single piece of talisman paper and allow them to cooperate with each other as if they were a single whole, then it could be called a 9th grade talisman. After 9, it returned to 1. When 1 was able to superimpose 2 complete 9th grade talismans and form a connection with each other, 1 was instead able to be called a talisman formation master, and the talismans crafted by the person would possess the initial form of a formation. Moreover, once 1 attained the level of talisman formation master, 1 was able to inscribe various talisman marking structures onto formation-carrying objects like formation flags, formation discs, formation stone, etc. Only in this way would 1 be able to fully utilize the might of formations. All in all, no matter if it was talismans or formations, the structure of talisman markings was the most basic core. The Tao of talismans was the mastering of the structures of talisman markings to develop the profundities of the heaven and the earth. It was a vastly grand Tao amongst the 3,000 grand Tao, and since ancient times until the present, there had been many almighty figures that used the Tao of talismans to achieve the heavenly immortal realm. Xianxia's comprehension of the heaven Tao had already attained the Tao insight realm, and he'd already mastered a complete Wind Tao insight. Coupled with his soul visualizing the Fuxi divine statue every day, his comprehension towards the Tao of talismans had advanced by leaps and bounds without much effort. It wouldn't be long before he would become a talisman formation master. The thing that made him the most pleasantly surprised was that his comprehension in the Tao of talismans allowed him to easily comprehend the profundities and master the essence of the universe stars layer body forging arts while cultivating it. Just like a few days ago, when his body refinement advanced to the 2nd level of the Violet Palace realm, the originally obscure and dense 2nd wood shaman marking was easily condensed successfully by him. That unhindered feeling that was like floating clouds and flowing water was still vivid in his memories today. Shaman markings were mysterious and profound, as if they were formed naturally, but wasn't this also a type of talisman marking within the heaven and earth? It was precisely with this knowledge as a foundation that no matter if it was body refinement or cultivating grand astral palm, it caused Xianxia to unconsciously observe and comprehend it using his talisman Tao knowledge, and this allowed him to comprehend an even deeper level of its profundities. He was suddenly enlightened towards the various questions in his heart that were difficult to understand, and his path of cultivation became a much more level path. The benefits from the advancement in the Tao of talismans wasn't limited to this. It provided surprising effects when he refined the Oblivion Wind Flowing Light Sword formation and cultivated the Windflow Divination Sword, causing his knowledge in the Sword Tao to become deeper and deeper, and the might of the sword formation and sword technique he executed to become stronger alongside with it. As the saying goes, learn one and you can infer the rest. Some almighty figures from the ancient times were even able to comprehend thousands or 10,000s of Tao insights. In the end, they brought all the Tao insights together to be understood thoroughly before converging them all into one, allowing them to grasp the final profundities of the heaven and earth and attain the highest path to the Tao. Presently, Xianxia had only completely mastered a single Wind Tao insight, and his comprehension towards the Talisman Tao and Sword Tao could only be considered to be minor attainments. He still had a long way to go. But even then, with his current age and strength, even if it was amongst geniuses, he was in existence at a monstrous level. He wasn't inferior in the slightest to the core disciples of some ancient sects, and he even surpassed them. On this day, Xianxia awoke from his meditation and raised his eyes to look at the nearby rock wall, and numerous lines that represented days of time were inscribed on it. 1.5 years have passed so quickly. The ancient saying is true, time does fly by like a shuttle that twinkles before the eyes, and only such a description can describe a trace of the true essence of the grand Tao of time. Just like the master of the abode, he has surely already mastered the supreme grand Tao of time, as only then would he be able to reverse the course of events and change the speed at which time flowed. Xianxia didn't sigh with emotion too much before standing up. His tall figure seemed even more graceful and extraordinary, relaxed and carefree. Time didn't leave behind any traces on him. His handsome face was still the same as before. However, his gaze seemed indifferent, instead causing one to feel a deep feeling that was vast like the sea, and making one to unable to help one's mind from being completely attracted by him. I wonder if little Ling Bai and the 7th gold sword bamboo have finished fusing. Never mind, I'll leave this place first. Otherwise, my pace to Dragon Lake City will be delayed. Xianxia thought for a moment, He stopped being reluctant to leave this place. Then his figure swayed and he'd already vanished. When Xianxia was leaving the first level of the Heaven Peak of Trials, within the oceanic desert, a group of 7 people were ceaselessly cruising forward hesitantly under the protection of a large umbrella that was coiled in gold lights, and they seemed to be searching for something. So long as the violent gale and raging sandstorm came close to them, it would be reflected back by the gold light that surged out from the large umbrella, and it was precisely because of this that when their group flew within the oceanic desert, it seemed to be extremely easy and free as if they were moving on flat ground. Marshal Uncle Su Lung, we've been searching for half a year. Yet there isn't a trace of that kid. He wouldn't have been swallowed by the sandstorm, right? Asked Su Dingyuan, who had brows that were like blades. Amongst the 6 of them, only he had the best relationship with Su Lung, and only he could ask some words that shouldn't be spoken. Humph! Su Lung grunted coldly and said with an emotionless expression, "Impossible. Even if he was torn into pieces by the sandstorms and died, as a Violet Palace realm cultivators, his aura would absolutely not vanish so quickly. During this past 6 months, they'd shuttled back and forth within this surging sandstorm to search for Xianxia's traces. They seemed to be able to easily avoid the sandstorms and gales, yet none of them dared let down their guard. After all, this was the oceanic desert that possessed the nickname as the Land of Death. It was filled with dense spatial tiers and extremely terrifying restrictions and ruins. Even some rebirth realm cultivators had never returned once entering the oceanic desert, and this was sufficient to prove how terrifying this place was. Only Su Lung, who possessed the highest cultivation in their group, was at the Golden Core realm, which was 1 realm inferior to the rebirth realm. Thus, they naturally didn't dare be careless. But straining their nerves day and night while keeping vigilant was a type of torture towards their minds. Coupled with having not found a trace of Xianxia until today, it caused their moods to become gloomy and irritable. Especially Su Lung. His mood was awfully bad, as a matter that he originally thought would be easily accomplished had unexpectedly been delayed for an entire 6 months. Not to mention Xianxia, they even didn't find a piece of Xianxia's hair, and it naturally made him, who was arrogant and self-conceited, be extremely displeased. When I capture that kid, I'll surely pluck out his tendons and skin him, Su Lung muttered fiercely in his heart. It was at this moment that a clear ring sounded out from within his pocket. Even though the sound was tiny, it caused his heart to shake and a trace of happiness to appear on his face. He stretched out his hand to withdraw a pearl that was completely translucent like a liquid pearl, and it emitted a dreamlike multicolored ripple. Boundless secret realm discovering pearl. The eyes of Su Dingyi's group of 6 sprang wide open, and a strand of burning greed that couldn't be concealed was emitted from their eyes. This pearl was something Su Lang obtained from a mysterious ruins, and it was an extremely miraculous treasure. Not only was it able to detect some concealed spaces within an area of 50 kilometers, it was also able to break open the barrier of some secret realms, and it was extremely profound. Su Long had once used this pearl to help the Su clan find an immortal abode within a secret realm, acquiring huge amounts of cultivation techniques, books, medicinal pills, and treasures from within it, and it had caused an extremely great stir in the entire Dragon Lake city. As a member of the Su clan, how could Su Dingyi and the others not know of the boundless secret realm discovering Pearl's reputation? The cultivation realm had existed for innumerable years until now, and countless secret realms and abodes were left behind in the world. These places had attracted countless cultivators to try their luck and find their own good fortune, and many peerless experts that commanded the clouds and wind had achieved tremendous advancements in their cultivations because of obtaining some ancient inheritances, allowing them to be famed throughout the world. Whereas possessing the boundless secret realm discovering Pearl was equivalent to possessing a key to open these secret realms and abodes, and the possessor was much closer to the good fortune of attaining immortality. Which cultivator in the world wouldn't be tempted by this pearl? It was exactly because he possessed this pearl that Su Lung's name was like a thunderclap to the ears of everyone in Dragon Lake City, and was known to all in the city. Besides that, it allowed his status as a Su clan elder became even stronger, and he enjoyed resources that were far beyond the reach of an ordinary person. An independent space exists within the nearby 50 kilometers. Su Lung raised his eyes to sweep outwards, then looked at the pearl in his hand before speaking with extreme certainty. Is it an ancient abode? I think that it might be Xianxia's hiding spot. No matter what it is, wouldn't we know once we take a look? If it's an abode or secret realm, we'll plunder it mercilessly. If it's Xianxia's hiding spot, then it's just nice for us to capture him and make him spit out the treasures from the Sword Immortal's abode. With Martial Uncle Su Lung here, why should we worry that we can't accomplish our mission? The exhaustion in the hearts of everyone was completely swept away as they started to discuss all at once, and their words were mostly flattery towards Su Lung. Let's go. At that time, listen to my orders when making a move and you'll be bound to obtain the benefits. Su Lung's frosty expression eased up greatly. Cultivators were people as well, and they liked being flattered. Thank you, Martial Uncle Su Lung. Su Dingyi and the others were extremely delighted, and they had excited expressions. Su Lung led the others to fly out explosively right away, and not long after, they arrived at a low sand dune. When they arrived here, the boundless secret realm discovering pearl abruptly emitted a string of clear chimes, and the multicolored light on its surface became even more dreamlike. Let's go! Su Lung shouted out loudly. Then the pearl flew up to midair, and its entire body was suffused by mist as a 5-colored beam of light transformed into an over 100 m long waterfall that swiftly swept towards the surroundings. Swish! Under the shine of the misty light that was like a multicolored mist, the originally empty sand dune was suddenly suffused with layer upon layer of translucent waves. It was like an extremely mysterious barrier wall that rose and fell indeterminately, and it warped and fluctuated. As expected, it's a secret realm. All of you follow behind me and don't get lost. Otherwise, even I am unable to save all of you. Su Lung instructed before taking a deep breath. Then he held onto the pearl as he took the lead to walk towards the translucent waves that warped and fluctuated. When the others saw this, their expressions became serious as they followed closely behind him. Under the shine of the multicolored lights from the boundless secret realm discovering pearl, the translucent and warping waves were like a pricked bubble, splitting open into a narrow and steep rift, and not long after Su Lung and the others vanished, it vanished from the world. The surging river rolled without end. The instant Xianxia came out from the heaven peak of trials, he noticed Jiyu standing on the grass on the bank of the river from afar, seeming to have been waiting for him since long ago. Your advancement isn't bad. Really not bad. Jiyu swept his gaze over Xianxia, seeming to have already seen through the fruits of Xianxia's cultivation during this period of time, and a trace of a smile appeared on his face. Xianxia smiled as he frankly received this praise, and he was extremely calm and indifferent in his heart. After all, during this half a year, thousands of kgs of the spirit liquid in his storage ring had been consumed and over 100 Starsoul meteorites had been used up. It would truly be bullshit if he didn't advance in the slightest. I've already refined the 7th gold sword bamboo for you. Take a look. As Jiyu spoke, he flipped open his hand and a meter-long sword appeared before Xianxia's eyes. The sword was entirely pitch black, with dim black lights surrounding it, and it vaguely emitted traces of the piercingly cold aura of lightning. There seems to be nothing different? Xianxia was stunned, and he was just intending to take it up and inspect it when an unexpected event occurred at this moment. Swish! A strand of boundless and vast nirvanic aura abruptly surged out from the surface of the 7th gold sword bamboo. Then a black light flashed, and it had already transformed into a little person that was 10 centimeters tall. The extremely handsome little person wore white clothes that drifted in the wind, and he had starry eyes and sword-shaped brows. Bright lights revolved around him as he floated in midair, and there were even traces of lightning arcs twined around him. His imposing manner was exceedingly vast, sharp, piercingly cold, destructive, and even carried along a strand of nirvanic aura that seemed eternal. Little Ling Bai? Xianxia's eyes sprang wide open as he instantly came to an understanding. After Jiyu executed the soul fuse arts, the 7th gold sword bamboo wasn't the inanimate object from before, but had instead fused with Ling Bai, who was a sword soul, to become a living life. Moreover, the energy of lightning that was originally contained within the 7th gold sword bamboo had completely fused with the Nirvana sword insight that Ling Bai possessed. It possessed the lightning's piercingly cold aura of annihilation and the eternal nirvanic aura, and it had become even more terrifying from before to the point that it caused Xianxia to be unable to avoid from feeling a trace of fear. Xianxia, I can cultivate already. Ha ha ha. Ling Bai leaped onto Xianxia's shoulder as he smiled to the point his eyes became two crescents, and he was obviously exceedingly happy. Oh, then how formidable are you now? Xianxia asked curiously. This was the first magic treasure he'd seen that was able to cultivate by itself. Moreover, he'd never heard of anything about magic treasures being able to cultivate in the past, so he was naturally exceedingly curious in his heart. Ling Bai was stunned and his expression flickered between a livid and ashen expression, seeming to be extremely furious yet seeming to be depressed, and he didn't open his mouth for a long time. Xianxia hurriedly consoled. It doesn't matter if your strength is weak. Can't you cultivate? So long as you continue persisting, there will come a day that you'll become strong. Really? Ling Bai's spirits were rejuvenated. Then a strand of embarrassment surged onto his little face as he said slowly, There's no harm in telling you. My current strength is extremely weak indeed. It's almost similar to a Golden Hall Realm cultivator. Golden Hall Realm cultivator? Xianxia was stunned. If this level of strength was extremely weak, then wouldn't that mean that I can't even be considered to be weak? Don't laugh at me. I was actually very formidable in the past. Hey, why has your expression become so stiff? Are you looking down on me? Alas, actually, I feel it's extremely shameful as well. The shame on Ling Bai's little face grew when he saw Xianxia staying silent, and his voice went lower and lower. Xianxia's expression had completely gone stiff. Is this little fellow mocking me? Is he? Don't worry. When I executed the soulfuse arts, I left behind a trace of a soul brand for you. This little fellow will only be your most loyal subordinate in the future, and it's impossible for him to harm you, said Jiyu via voice transmission. He thought that Xianxia's expression was unnatural because Xianxia was afraid the Ling Bai would escape his control. I just want to know, is the strength of a Golden Hall Realm cultivator extremely weak in the cultivation world? Xianxia sighed via voice transmission. Ha 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 ha. Jiyu laughed loudly as only now did he understand that Xianxia had been provoked by Ling Bai's words. Senior Jiyu, are you making fun of me? Ling Bai's expression was extremely unsightly, and he resolved in his heart to properly cultivate, as the feeling of losing face was too depressing. Jiyu laughed even louder when he heard this, to the point he bent over with laughter. Senior Jiyu, I intend to leave. How should I leave this sword tomb nirvana realm? Xianxia hurriedly changed the topic of conversation. The energy that holds the sword tomb nirvana realm together was left behind by Ling Bai's master, and it's an extremely powerful nirvana energy. So long as Ling Bai is alive, this energy will be confined within that space forever, and its objective is naturally to protect Ling Bai's life. But so long as Ling Bai is dead, that space will be destroyed along with him, said Jiyu slowly. Kill Ling Bai? Xianxia's heart skipped a beat, and he forcefully stopped himself from asking. He knew that Jiyu would surely not do this. Otherwise, Jiyu wouldn't execute the soulfuse arts and fuse Ling Bai with the 7th gold sword bamboo. Jiyu continued. Of course, it's different now. After Ling Bai cultivated the soulfuse arts, he has already fused into one with the 7th gold sword bamboo, and it's no different from being reborn. At this moment, the nirvana energy that holds the sword tomb nirvana realm together is a tree without roots, water without a source, and you can break open the confines by asking Ling Bai to absorb them. So that's how it is. Xianxia came to a sudden understanding. Right? Take Bai Kuei along when you leave, said Jiyu. Bai Kuei that lay in Jiyu's embrace was already extremely anxious since long ago, and he flew onto Xianxia's left shoulder with a swish before stretching out his pink and tender little tongue to lick Xianxia's neck with extreme warmth. Xianxia was licked to the point he felt slightly itchy, and he was just about to stop Bai Kuei when he instead saw Ling Bai's eyes light up upon seeing Bai Kuei. Ling Bai leaped onto Xianxia's left shoulder with a swish before straddling his legs, intending to ride on Bai Kuei's body, and he even cried out excitedly. What a good spirit beast! It's just right to be my mount, to accompany me as I point my sword at the world and make a name for myself. Ling Bai was 10 centimeters tall and wore white clothes. Bai Kuei was instead possessed fluffy snow-white fur and was only the size of a fist, and the two little fellows seemed to contrast beautifully with each other. However, Bai Kuei was instead unwilling to allow Ling Bai to mount him, and his figure flashed, instantly leaping onto Xianxia's right shoulder. When Ling Bai saw this, he couldn't help but burst into rage, and he said in his heart before chasing after Bai Kuei, "A little spirit beast dares resist me?" Just like this, the two little fellows chased after each other atop Xianxia's shoulders, and their speeds were both swift like a bolt of lightning as they played extremely happily. After you go out, find some magic treasures you can use to feed him. After all, he's a top auspicious beast in the world, and making him starve isn't a good thing. Jiyu said with a smile, "I've already helped you conceal his aura. Unless it's an almighty figure that has comprehended the profundity of nature. Otherwise, no one in this world is able to recognize his identity." "Okay, I'll take good care of him." Xianxia nodded. Apiccio was able to gather karmic luck, and such an auspicious beast was something even many almighty figures from ancient times were extremely covetous of, so he naturally wouldn't do anything that ruined God's good gifts. "Alright, leave the Sword Tomb Nirvana realm first. Once you leave the abode this time, you can enter once more when your body refinement and chi refinement cultivations both enter into the Golden Hall realm." Jiyu flicked his sleeve, and a formidable strength that couldn't be defended against surged out, and Xianxia felt his vision go black before he vanished within the abode in the next moment. Ancient and decayed marks were everywhere within the exceedingly vast and grand hall, like broken tables, chairs, pedestals, stone pillars, and the white and ghastly bones that filled the ground. Why are there so many bones in this place? Could it be that it's a restricted area used for confining prisoners? Su Lung's gaze swept the surroundings, and as he looked at the decaying bones, rusty and mottled weapons, and corroded and shattered clothing, his heart palpitated for no reason. "Kacha! Kacha!" Su Dingyi's group of 6 trampled on the innumerable bones as they searched the great hall excitedly, and they seemed to want to discover some treasures. But to their astonishment, this place actually didn't contain a single treasure, and their expressions instantly became exceedingly unsightly. "Martial Uncle Su Lung, this place is obviously an abandoned palace. There are no treasures here, and it seems like no one has come here for an extremely long time." "Yeah, I originally thought that Xianxia was hiding here, but who knew that it's actually a damnable place like this? Such bad luck. Damn it. I wonder who had nothing better to do than to open a confined space like this. There's something wrong with that person's head, right?" Su Dingyi's group of 3 grumbled endlessly. They originally thought it was a secret realm, and even if it wasn't good, they would still be able to find Xianxia's tracks from within it. But unexpectedly, there wasn't anything valuable at all, and they were naturally slightly exasperated. "Did all of you not notice that there seems to be a type of energy surging here? It's neither being created nor destroyed, neither alive nor dead, and it causes one to feel despair, helpless, dispirited, uneasy." Su Lung's eyes gazed at the surroundings as he spoke slowly. The hearts of everyone jerked when they were reminded, and it was indeed as Su Lung said. The entire vast great hall was indeed deathly silent to the point it was slightly bizarre. Unknowingly, it had caused their feelings to be stuffed full of various unpleasant feelings. "Let's go. This place is too strange, we should leave quickly." Su Lung hadn't finished speaking when an unexpected event abruptly occurred within the great hall. Whoosh! A black hole tore space apart as it appeared at the center of the great hall, and practically at the same moment, a thin youth flew out from within it. This youth had handsome features and an extraordinary disposition, and the hole in space vanished without a trace after he appeared. "Xianxia, this fellow was really hiding here. Ha! Traveling far and wide, yet finding him by chance." When they saw this youth, Su Dingyi and the other all revealed a trace of violent joy, as they originally thought that they would return empty-handed, yet never imagined that the treasures would deliver itself to them. Damn it! Why have they come in as well? Xianxia's pupils couldn't help but constrict as his gaze swept past Su Dingyi's group of 6, and especially when he saw the black-clothed and cold young man that stood in the center position. This person casually stood there, yet his body emitted an extremely terrifying aura. Moreover, the energy of yin and yang vaguely flowed about above him, occasionally transforming into spirit and essence, and occasionally surging out with strands of black and white flames that leaped about. Spirit and essence being generated together, and yin and yang blended together. A golden core realm cultivator. After a cultivator advanced into the golden core realm, the cultivator would have condensed the true essence within the body into a golden core which the yin and yang within had blended and promoted the generation of spirit and essence, and various strange phenomenon would surge out above the cultivator. For example, the indistinct pattern of airflow that surged out above Su Lang was the phenomenon that was formed from the circulation of his own formidable vital energy and blood. 6 Golden Hall Realm cultivators are already sufficient to give me a headache. Now another Golden Core Realm cultivator has come. Besides being surprised in his heart, the nerves in Xianxi's entire body were instantly strained to the limit. He's Xianxi. Su Lang glanced coldly at Xianxi and said coldly, I'm Su Lang. Don't forget my name when you die. Bang, bang, bang. As he spoke, the airflow on Su Lang's body surged and roiled like a beating drum that emitted a string of explosive bangs. Swoosh! A flying sword tore through the sky and fiercely struck towards the distant Xianxi. He didn't even say a word before attacking. He was cold and merciless.